Brookland News Live begins right now. Here's Mitchell.
Hi everybody, welcome here into Brookland News Live. I'm Jackson Mitchell. It is so good to be with you. We're coming on the air here a little earlier than what you might expect, simply because Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell now is speaking there from the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C. after today's possible cut, possible holding, possible rise in interest rates. We'll see here what the Federal Reserve Chair is saying. Let's listen in.
On economic activity in the current quarter, but these effects should be mostly offset by higher growth next quarter, reflecting the reopening. In our summary of economic projections, the median participant projects that real GDP will rise 1.7% this year and 2.3% next year, somewhat stronger than projected in September. In the labor market, although official employment data for October and November are delayed, available evidence suggests that both layoffs and hiring remain low, and that both households' perceptions of job availability and firms' perceptions of hiring difficulty continue to decline. The official report on the labor market for September, the most recent release, showed that the unemployment rate continued to edge up, reaching 4.4%, and that job gains had slowed significantly since earlier in the year. A good part of the slowing likely reflects a decline in the growth of the labor force due to lower immigration and labor force participation, though labor demand has clearly softened as well. In this less dynamic and somewhat softer labor market, the downside risks to employment appear to have risen in recent months. In our SEP, the median projection of the unemployment rate is 4.5% at the end of this year and edges down thereafter. Inflation has eased significantly from its highs in mid-2022, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-run goal. Very little data on inflation have been released since our meeting in October. Total PCE prices rose 2.8% over the 12 months ending in September, and excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices also rose 2.8%. These readings are higher than earlier in the year as inflation for goods has picked up, reflecting the effects of tariffs. In contrast, disinflation appears to be continuing for services. Near-term measures of inflation expectations have declined from their peaks earlier in the year, as reflected in both market and survey-based measures. Most measures of longer-term expectations remain consistent with our 2% inflation goal. The median projection in the SEP for total PCE inflation is 2.9% this year and 2.4% next year, a bit lower than the median projection in September. Thereafter, the median falls to 2%. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. At today's meeting, the committee decided to lower the target range for the federal funds rate by a quarter percentage point to 3.5 to 3.75%. In the near term, risks to inflation are tilted to the upside and risks to employment to the downside, a challenging situation. There is no risk-free path for policy as we navigate this tension between our employment and inflation goals. A reasonable base case is that the effects of tariffs on inflation will be relatively short-lived, effectively a one-time shift in the price level. Our obligation is to make sure that a one-time increase in the price level does not become an ongoing inflation problem. But with downside risks to employment having risen in recent months, the balance of risks has shifted. Our framework calls for us to take a balanced approach in promoting both sides of our dual mandate. Accordingly, we judged it appropriate at this meeting to lower our policy rate by a quarter percentage point. With today's decision, we have lowered our policy rate 3/4 of a percentage point over our last 3 meetings. This further normalization of our policy stance should help stabilize the labor market while allowing inflation to resume its downward trend toward 2% once the effects of tariffs have passed through. The adjustments to our policy stance since September bring it within a range of plausible estimates of neutral and leave us well positioned to determine the extent and timing of additional adjustments to our policy rate based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. In our summary of economic projections, FOMC participants wrote down their individual assessments of an appropriate path of the federal funds rate under what each participant judges to be the most likely scenario for the economy. The median participant projects that the appropriate level of the federal funds rate will be 3.4% at the end of 2026 and 3.1% at the end of 2027, unchanged from September. As is always the case, these individual forecasts are subject to uncertainty, and they're not a committee plan or decision. Monetary policy is not on a preset course, and we will make our decisions on a meeting-by-meeting basis. Let me turn now to issues related to the implementation of monetary policy, with the reminder that these issues are separate from and have no implications for the stance of monetary policy. In light of the continued tightening in money market interest rates relative to our administered rates and other indicators of reserve market conditions, the committee judged that reserve balances have declined to ample levels. Accordingly, at today's meeting, the committee decided to initiate purchases of shorter-term Treasury securities, mainly Treasury bills, for the sole purpose of maintaining an ample supply of reserves over time. Such increases in our securities holdings ensure that the federal funds rate remains within its target range and are necessary because the growth of the economy leads to rising demand over time for our liabilities, including currency and reserves. As detailed in a statement released today by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, reserve management purchases will amount to $40 billion in the first month and may remain elevated for a few months to alleviate expected near-term pressures in money markets. Thereafter, we expect the size of reserve management purchases to decline, though the actual pace will depend on market conditions. In our implementation framework, an ample supply of reserves means that the federal funds rate and other short-term interest rates are primarily controlled by the setting of our administered rates, rather than day-to-day discretionary interventions in money markets. In this regime, standing repurchase agreement, or repo operations, are a critical tool to ensure that the federal funds rate remains within its target range, even on days of elevated pressures in money markets. Consistent with this view, the committee eliminated the aggregate limit on standing repo operations. These operations are intended to support monetary policy implementation and smooth market functioning and should be used when economically sensible. To conclude, the Fed has been assigned two goals for monetary policy: maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to supporting maximum employment, bringing our inflation sustainably down to our 2% goal, and keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. At the Fed, we will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Howard.
Thank you. Howard Schneider with Reuters. Just first turning to the statement, just to be clear, we're on the same page here. The insertion of the phrase, considering the extent and timing of additional adjustments, does that indicate that the Fed is now on hold until there's some clearer signal from inflation or jobs or the evolution of the economy along the baseline outlook?
So, yes, the adjustments since September bring our policy within a broad range of estimates of neutral. And as we noted in our statement today, we are well positioned to determine the extent and timing of additional adjustments based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. That new language points out that we'll carefully evaluate that incoming data. And also, I would note that having reduced our policy rate by 75 basis points since September and 175 basis points since last September, the Fed funds rate is now within a broad range of estimates of its neutral value, and we are well positioned to wait to see how the economy evolves.
And if I could follow up on the outlook there, it seems like with the additional GDP growth coupled with easing inflation and a fairly steady unemployment rate, this seems like a pretty optimistic outlook for next year. What's given rise to that? Is this an early bet on AI? Is there some sense of improving productivity out there? What's driving that?
So a number of things are driving what's happening in the forecast. And I would say if you look broadly at outside forecasts, you do see a pickup pickup in growth in many of those now too. So it is, it's partly that consumer spending has held up. It's been resilient, and it to another degree, it is that AI spending on data centers and related to AI has been holding up business investment. So overall, the baseline expectation for next year is, at least at the Fed, and I think with outside forecasters too, is a pickup in growth from today's relatively low level of 1.7%. I mentioned that the SEP median is 1.7 for this year growth and 2.3 for next year. You actually, some of that is due to the shutdown. So you can take 0.2 out of 2026 and put it in 2025. So it would really be 1.9 and 2.1. But overall, yes, for a few reasons, fiscal policy is going to be supportive, and as I mentioned, AI spending will continue. The consumer continues to spend, so it looks like the baseline would be solid growth next year.
Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking our questions here. You had previously described rate cuts in terms of a risk management framework, and kind of following up on what Howard was asking, is the risk management phase of rate cuts over here, and have you taken out sufficient insurance, I guess, against potential weakness in terms of the data we might get next week when it comes to employment?
So we're going to get a great deal of data between now and the January meeting, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. And the data that we get are going to factor into our thinking. But yes, we have, if you go back, we held our policy rate at 5.4% for more than a year because inflation was high, very high, and unemployment and the labor market was really solid at that point. So what happened is over last summer of 24, inflation came down and the labor market began to show real signs of weakness. And so we decided, as our framework tells us to do, that when the risks to the two goals become more equal, you should move from a stance that favors really dealing with one of them, in that case inflation, to a more balanced, more neutral setting. And so we did that. We did some cutting, and then we paused for a while to work our way through what was happening in the middle of the year. And then we resumed cuts in September, and we've cut now 3. We've now cut a total of 175 basis points. And as I mentioned, we feel like where we're positioned now we're well positioned to wait and see how the economy evolves from here.
If I could just follow up on the SEP, you have a whole lot of big increase in the growth numbers, but not a big decline in the unemployment numbers. And is that an AI factor in there? What is going on in terms of the dynamic of you get more growth, but you don't get a whole lot of decline in unemployment? Thank you, sir.
So the implication is obviously higher productivity. And some of that may be AI. It just also, I think, productivity has just been almost structurally higher for several years now. So if you start thinking of it as 2% per year, you can sustain higher growth without more job creation. Of course, higher productivity is also what enables incomes to rise over long periods of time. So it's basically a good thing. But that's certainly the implication.
Thank you. Colby Smith with the New York Times. Today's decision was clearly very divided. It wasn't just the 2 official dissents against the cut, but there were also soft dissents from 4 others. And I'm just wondering if this reluctance from several people to support recent reductions suggests that there is a much higher bar for cuts in the near term. And what exactly does the committee need to see if things are well positioned right now to support a January reduction?
Sure. So let me just say, as I mentioned, and as I've mentioned here before, the situation is that our 2 goals are a bit in tension, right? So interestingly, everyone around the table at the FOMC agrees that inflation is too high and that we want it to come down, and agrees that the labor market has softened and that there's further risk. Everyone agrees on that. Where the difference is how do you weight those risks, and what does your forecast look like, and where do you, ultimately where do you think the bigger risk is, and it's very unusual to have persistent tension between the 2 parts of the mandate, and when you do, this is what you see. And I think it's actually what you would expect to see, and we do see it. Meanwhile, the discussions we have are as good as any we've had in my 14 years at the Fed. They're very thoughtful, respectful, and you just have people who have strong views. And we come together and we reach a place where we can make a decision. We made a decision today. We had 9 out of 12 supported it, so fairly broad support. But it's not like the normal situation where everyone agrees on the direction and what to do. It's more spread out, and I think that's only inherent in the situation. In terms of what it would take, we all have an outlook in terms of what's going to come, but I think ultimately having cut 75 and the effects of the 75 basis points will only begin to be coming in. As I've said before a couple times, we're well positioned to wait to see how the economy evolves. We'll just have to see. And we will get, as you know, quite a bit of data. I should mention on the data, as long as I'm talking about it, that we're going to need to be careful in assessing, particularly the household survey data. There are very technical reasons about the way data are collected in some of these measures, both in inflation and in labor, in the labor market, so that the data may be distorted and not just sort of more volatile, but distorted, and that's really because data was not collected in October and half of November. So we're going to get data, but we're going to have to look at it carefully and with a somewhat skeptical eye by the time of the January meeting. Notwithstanding that, we will have a lot of the December data by the time of the January meeting. So we expect to see a lot more, but I'm just saying that what we get for example, CPI or for the household survey, we're going to look at that really carefully and understand that it may be distorted by very technical factors.
And just one more question on dissents. You talk about it in a very positive way, just given the complicated nature of the situation we're in economically. But is there any point in which those dissents become counterproductive, either to the Fed's communication and the messaging around the policy path forward?
I don't feel that we're at that point at all. I don't. I would say, again, these are good, thoughtful, respectful discussions, and you hear people say, and you hear many outside analysts say the same thing. I could make a case for either side. I could make that case. It's a close call. We have to make decisions. And we always hope that the data will give us a clear read, but in this situation, you have competing. If you look through the SEP, you'll see that a very large number of participants agree that risks are to the upside for unemployment and to the upside for inflation. So what do? You've got one tool. You can't do two things at once. So at what pace do you move? What size moves do you make, and that kind of thing? And what's the timing of them? It's a very challenging situation. I think we're in a good place to, as I mentioned, to wait and see how the economy evolves.
Nick.
Nick Timmeros of the Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, there's been some discussion recently of the 1990s. In the 1990s, the committee did 2 discrete sequences of 3 quarter-point cuts, one in 1995-96 and one in 1998. And after both of those, the next move in rates was up, not down. With policy now closer to neutral, is it a foregone conclusion that the next move in rates is down, or should we think of policy risks as genuinely two-sided from here?
So I don't think that a rate hike is anybody's base case at this point, and I'm not hearing that. What you see is some people feel we should stop here and that we're at the right place and just wait. Some people feel like we should cut once or more this year and next year. But when people are writing down their estimates of policy of where it should go, it is either holding here or cutting a little or cutting more than a little. So I don't see the base case as involving that. So of course, a data set of 2, now 3, is not a big data set. But you are right about those 2 3-cut times in the 90s.
If I could follow up, the unemployment rate has been rising very gradually for the better part of 2 years, and indeed the statement today no longer describes the unemployment rate as remaining low. What gives you confidence it won't continue rising in 2026, especially when housing and other rate-sensitive sectors still appear to be feeling restrictive policy from the, notwithstanding the 150 basis points in cuts prior to today?
So I think the idea is that with now having cut 75 basis points more now and having policy, I'd call it in a broad range of plausible estimates of neutral, that will be a place which will enable the labor market to stabilize or to only tick up 1 or 2 more tenths, but we won't see, any kind of a sharper downturn, which we haven't seen any evidence of at all. At the same time, policy is still in a place where it's not accommodative, and we feel like we have made progress this year in non-tariff related inflation, and that as tariffs come through, as they flow through, that'll show through next year. But as I said, we're well placed to wait and see how that turns out. That is our expectation, but we're going to start to see the data, and it'll tell us whether we were right or not.
Claire.
Claire Jones, Financial Times. A lot of people interpreted your comments at the October meeting that, when there's a foggy situation, we slow down, to mean that, there wouldn't be a cut now, there'd be a cut in January instead. So it'd be good to get a sense of why did the committee decide to move today rather than to move in January instead? Thank you.
Right. So in October, I said that there was no certainty of moving, and that was indeed correct. I said it's possible you could think about it that way, but I was careful to say other people could look at it differently. So why did we move today? I would say point to a couple things. First of all, gradual cooling in the labor market has continued. Unemployment is now up 0.3 from June through September. Payroll jobs averaging 40,000 per month since April. We think there's an overstatement in these numbers by about 60,000, so that would be negative 20,000 per month. And also, just to point out one other thing, surveys of households and businesses both showed declining supply and demand for workers. So I think you can say that the labor market has continued to cool gradually, maybe just a touch more gradually than we thought. In terms of inflation, it's going to come in a touch lower, and I think the evidence is kind of growing that what's happening here is services inflation coming down, and that's offset by increases in goods, and that goods inflation is entirely in sectors where there are tariffs. So that does build on the story, and so far it's only a story, that that the goods inflation, which is really the source of the excess at this point, almost more than half the source of the excess inflation is goods, is tariffs. And you've got to say then, so what do we expect from tariffs? And I would say that is to some extent down to looking for broader economic heat. Do we see a hot economy? Do we see constraints? Do we see what's going on with wages? You saw the ECI report today. It doesn't feel like a hot economy that wants to generate, Phillips curve kind of inflation. So we look at all those things, and we say that this was a decision to make. It obviously wasn't unanimous, but overall that was the judgment that we made, and that's the action we took.
Just on the ample reserves point, how concerned were people around the table about some of the tensions we've seen in money markets? Thank you.
I wouldn't say concerned. So what really happened is this. Balance sheet shrinkage, sometimes called QT, went on. We had a framework in place for monitoring it, and nothing happened. The overnight reverse repo facility went down pretty much close to zero. And then beginning in September, the federal funds rate started to tick up within the range, right? And it ticked up almost all the way to interest-on reserve balances. There's nothing wrong with that. What that's telling you is that we're actually in an ample reserves regime. So, we knew this was going to come. When it finally did come, it came a little quicker than expected, but we were absolutely there to take the actions that we said we would take. So, and those actions are today. So, we announced that we're resuming reserve management purchases. That is completely separate from monetary policy. It's just we need to keep an ample supply of reserves out there. Why so big? The answer to that is, if you look ahead, you'll see that April 15th is coming up, and our framework is such that we want to have ample reserves even at times when reserves are at a low level temporarily. So that's what happens on tax day. People pay a lot of money to the government, reserves drop sharply and temporarily. So this seasonal buildup that we'll see in the next few months was going to happen anyway. It was going to happen because April 15th is April 15th. There's also a secular ongoing growth of the balance sheet. We have to keep reserves, call it constant as it relates to the banking system or to the whole economy. And that alone calls for us to increase about $20–25 billion per month. So that's a small part. That's going on. It's also happening in the context of a temporary few-month front loading to get reserves high enough to get through the tax period in mid-April. So that's what's happening there.
Andrew.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This is the last post-FOMC press conference before an important Supreme Court hearing next month. Can you talk about how you're hoping the Supreme Court will rule? And I'm just curious why the Fed's been so reticent on such a pivotal matter.
It's not something I want to address here, Andrew. We're not legal commentators. It's before the courts, and we think we don't think that we help matters by trying to engage as a public discussant of that. I'll give you a mulligan, though.
No, thanks. I don't know if that means I get 3 questions, but
no, just one more.
I guess I wanted to come back to the 1990s question, and like, do you see that as a useful model for thinking about what is happening in the economy right now?
I don't think it rises to that level. So I did think that in 2019, where we cut 3 times, but this is such a unique situation. It's not the 1970s, let's put it that way, but we do have tension between our 2 goals. And so that's just unique in my time at the Fed, and I think going back a long ways, we haven't had that. In our framework, as you know, says that when that's the case, that we try to, take a balanced approach to the 2 things, and we look at how far they are and how long it would take to get them back to each of them back to the goal. And that's a very subjective analysis, really. But it just tells you you've got to. And I think ultimately what it says is when they're broadly equally threatened or equally at risk, you should be kind of neutral. Because if you're either accommodative or tight, you're favoring one or the other goal. And so we've been sort of moving in the direction of neutral. Now we're in the range of neutral. We're in the high end of the range of neutral, I would say, and that's what we're doing now. It so happened that we've cut 3 times. That we haven't made any decision about January, but as I've said, we think we're well positioned to wait and see how the economy performs.
Edward.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Edward Lawrence with Fox Business. I wanted to ask you, the inflation expectations has come down in your SEP report. Do you see the tariff price increases as passing through in the next 3 months? Is it a 6-month process that we're looking for that to end? And then because of that, is jobs the threat to the economy?
So with tariff inflation, there's the announcement of a tariff, and then there's, they start to take effect, and then it takes some months. Goods may have to be shipped from other parts of the, it may take, quite a while for an individual tariff to take its full effect. But once it's had that effect, then the question is, isn't that just a one-time price increase? So we actually look at it, all of the announcements and what you get from all that. You see sort of for each one of them, there's a time period, and then it's fully in. So if there are no new tariff announcements, and we don't know that, but let's assume there are no major new tariff announcements, inflation from goods should peak in the first quarter or so, right, or roughly. We haven't been able to predict this with any precision. No one is. But call it the first quarter or so of next year should be the peak. And from here, it should be It shouldn't be big. It should be a couple tenths or even less than that. We don't really have precision on this. And after that, again, if there are no new tariffs that are being announced that will take 9 months to get fully in, and 9 months is also an estimate, then you should start to see that coming down in the back half of next year.
And I want to see if I could address sort of the elephant in the room. The president's been talking openly about a new Fed chairman. Does that hinder your current job right now or change your thinking at all?
No.
Mike.
No mulligans for it. Michael McKee from Bloomberg Radio and Television. 10-year rates are 50 basis points higher than when you started cutting back in September of 2024, and the yield curve basically has been steepening. Why do you think that continuing to cut now, especially in the absence of data, is going to bring down the yield on the thing that will move the economy the most?
So we're looking at the real economy and focusing on that. And you've got when the long bonds move around, you've got to look at why they're moving around. If you look at inflation compensation, it's very that's one part of it is inflation compensation break-evens, and they're at very comfortable levels. They're at levels consistent once you get out past the very short term now. Break-evens are at at quite levels that are quite consistent with 2% inflation over time. So there's nothing happening with rates going up out there that suggests concern about inflation in the long term or anything like that. I mean, I look at these things pretty regularly. Same thing with surveys. Surveys are all saying that the public understands our commitment to 2% and expects us to get back there. So why are rates going up? It has to be something else. It must be, an expectation of higher growth or something like that. And that's a lot of what's been going on. I mean, you saw a big move, toward the end of last year, which was not to do with us. It was to do with other developments.
Well, you just mentioned that the public is expecting you to get back to 2%, and Americans overwhelmingly are citing high prices, inflation, as their number one concern. Can you explain to them why you're prioritizing the labor market, which seems relatively stable to most people, instead of their number one concern, inflation?
So we, as you know, we have a network of contacts in the U.S. economy, which is really unmatched if you go through the 12 reserve banks. So we hear loud and clear how people are experiencing really costs. It's really high costs. And a lot of that is not the current rate of inflation. A lot of that is just embedded higher cost due to higher inflation in 2022 and 23. So that's what's going on. And so the best thing we can do is restore inflation to its 2% goal, and our policy is intended to do that, but also have a strong economy where real wages are going up, where people are getting jobs and earning money, and we're going to need to have some years where real compensation is higher, it's positive, significantly positive, so nominal wages are higher than inflation, for people to start feeling good about the affordability issue. And, so we're working hard on that. We're trying to keep inflation under control, but also support the labor market and strong wages so that people are earning enough money and feeling economically healthy again.
Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Guida with Politico. Just to follow up on that, I mean, this is now the third time that you've cut this year and inflation is around 3%. So is the message that you're sort of trying to send with that you're okay with where inflation is for now, as long as people understand that at some point you still want to get back to 2% because inflation is relatively stable where it is?
Everyone should understand, and the surveys show that they do, that we're committed to 2% inflation, and we will deliver 2% inflation. But it's a complicated, unusual, difficult situation where the labor market is also under pressure, where job creation may actually be negative. Now, supply of workers has also gone way down, so the unemployment rate hasn't moved that much. But it's a labor market that seems to have significant downside risks. People care a lot about that. That's their jobs. That's their ability, if they get laid off or if they're entering the labor force, to find work. So that's really important to people. The story with inflation, and we're well aware that this is a story at this point, is that if you get away from tariffs, inflation is in the low 2s. right? So it's really tariffs that's causing most of the inflation overshoot. And we do think of those as likely to, in the current situation, as likely to be a one-time price increase. Our job is to make sure that it is, and we will do that job. But right now, you've got this difficult balance, and there are risks to both sides. There's no risk-free path. If it was just inflation and the labor market was just really strong, and then rates would be higher, as they were for more than a year. We didn't have to worry about inflation. Sorry about the labor market, because the labor market unemployment was very low. If you remember when inflation was very high, there was a labor shortage, so we could focus entirely on inflation. Now it's different. We actually have risks to both, and I think we're doing the best we can for people. They also care about their jobs. They do care about affordability, and the best thing we can do there is both to support economic activity, but also, make sure that when tariff inflation goes down and disappears, inflation lands around 2%.
Elizabeth.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth Schulze with ABC News. Just to follow up, you keep talking about job growth being negative. Why do you think job growth is so much worse than some of the official data? Why do you think job growth is, to follow up on your comments about job growth, why is it so much worse than the official data is suggesting?
Oh, well, we know, I think I don't think this is particularly controversial. It's very difficult to estimate job growth in real time. They don't count everybody. They have a survey. And there's been something of a systematic overcount. And so we expected, and they correct it twice a year. So the last time they corrected it, we thought the correction would be 800,000 or 900,000. I won't get the numbers exactly right. And that was exactly what happened. So we think that has persisted. And so there's an overcount in the payroll job numbers, we think, continuing, and it will be corrected. I don't have the exact month in my head right now, and that's just, I think forecasters generally understand that. So, and we think it's about 60,000 a month, so 40,000 jobs could be negative 20, and that could be wrong.
Okay, so you've been listening in there to Fed Chair Jerome Powell. He's been speaking on these interest rates cuts, of course, cutting now by 0.25%, a quarter of a percentage point. You've been listening to him answer questions the third time in a row that the Fed has chosen to lower interest rates. I'm sure we will dive a little into that a little bit more. But we do have another event happening right now. President Donald Trump is speaking from the White House, holding a roundtable event. You see Michael Dell, the founder, I believe, of Dell, the one that makes laptops. Let's listen in here.
The great big beautiful bill, basically. That's how what gave us the authorization to do it. Michael, please.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. So, when we first heard about this idea, the idea was that the government would give $1,000 to a newborn baby in an account that they would own, and it would go in essentially the S&P 500 and compound. And when the child becomes 18, they could use that money to go to college, to buy a home, to start a business, to continue saving. And I thought that was a great idea. I thought it'd be great if companies matched the government's contribution, which we're doing. A lot of the companies around the table have committed to doing that. And also the thought about this is, wow, this is going to be like a platform for families and communities and philanthropists to contribute to those accounts. And so we originally started with the idea of, well, what if we gave some money to all the kids in our home state of Texas, right? We thought that would be a nice thing to do.
That's still a lot.
Yeah, there is. 1 out of 10 new kids in America born in Texas.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Happen to be a fan of the state of Texas. But anyway, we thought about it some more, and we thought, this is going to be something really special. We have a foundation. It focuses on children. It's been around for 26 years, and we said, well, why don't we go bigger? And so we talked about it, and now that the Investment America Act is a law, which that in itself is a incredible thing that occurred. It does create a platform, and we were super happy to announce that we would give $250. We arrived at $250 because next year will be the 250th birthday of America and 25 million children. We thought that was a nice thing to do because it would include most of the children that are 10 and under, that are not part of the government program, that live in zip codes where the median income is less than $150,000. And that was also an important part of our contribution. And I do believe there will be a number of other large gifts announced. I've already spoken with a few that will be announcing gifts at the state level,
Right.
and more to come.
Yeah. It's amazing, and it's amazing the vision you have, but that's why you're so successful, frankly. And to think that Michael started off with not a lot of money, I would say, right? Not too much, like very little. And he can give a gift of $6,250,000,000, and I know he said he's going to do a lot more. It's pretty amazing. It's really a beautiful thing to watch. So great for our country. So we have the Trump accounts are doing really well, and it's become, I have to tell you, just everyone's talking about it, beyond what I would have even thought. And it's going to make some young people relatively very wealthy. And in some cases, I mean, they could really be off to a great start. So some people have had that advantage and some people haven't, but it's a wonderful thing. Thank you to you and your beautiful wife. Thank you, sir. So it's a pleasure to welcome so many brilliant minds and distinguished business leaders back to the White House. I love these brilliant minds, including Michael Dell of Dell Technologies, who makes a great product. And I want to thank him for what he's done, what we just discussed, the accounts. We also are grateful to be joined by Enrique Lores of HP. So thank you very much, Enrique. Great job you're doing. Antonio Neri of HP Enterprise. Thank you very much. What's the difference between HP and HP Enterprise?
We focus on the cloud security, networking, and large systems.
The cloud's good. People have done very well with the cloud. That's great. Arvind Krishna of IBM, who's actually become, I would say, a legend. The job he's done. He's taken the stock from a rather low price to a very nice price. I won't say high because I'm sure you're going to say it's going to go up a lot more, right? But, so I can't say a high price. But he took IBM into a new stratosphere that nobody, I think, saw. If you go back to before when he took over the company, nobody would have even imagined that you'd be able to do what you've done. So congratulations, become a good friend. Cristiano Amon of Qualcomm, and thank you very much. Congratulations on success. I know a lot about your company. You've done amazing. And Executive Director of the Technology CEO Council, Bruce Millman. So, thank you very much. I think that these people know each other. We're going to be talking a little bit about technology today, and we'll take a few of your questions about technology. I'm sure you probably won't have too many of those questions. You'll be asking about some other things, right, Bruce? Our administration is committed to total dominance in technology. Right now, we're leading artificial intelligence by a lot. And I think, you look at what's going up, and we're writing rules, regulations. We want to keep it at the federal government level, so it's simple for the companies, very important, frankly. And I think we're pretty well committed. I spoke to some of the senators today, and I think we're committed to do that. We want to make it as simple as possible, as easy, because you're competing with some very big sources, and we want to stay number one by a lot. We're leading the world in building new data centers and new semiconductor and chip manufacturing facilities and new capacity for AI. And we're unleashing all of the forms, literally all forms of energy and natural gas and oil to clean, beautiful coal and safe, reliable nuclear power. And I'm giving them approval to, when they build these massive plants that cost $50 billion. It used to be that for $50 million, you could build a nice little shopping center. But for $500 million, you could build one of the biggest, most beautiful centers And now they're talking about $50 billion. So explain that one. These buildings are there's never been anything. There's never been anything like that. So you're all involved in that. It's pretty amazing. 1 year ago, our country was considered dead by many leaders throughout the world. And now we have what's called the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're the hottest country in the world right now. 10 months took us. I thought it was going to take longer, Michael. I didn't think we were going to have this success this soon. We have over $18 trillion being invested. So much of it by, like you're in for a lot. What's the number that you're looking at?
150.
150 billion. That's good. I don't know, Michael. Am I allowed to ask you? You already gave 6,250,000,000. Do you have you stated a number that you're at for investment, future investment?
Well, if I think about all the, investment that we make with the American companies that are adding capacity, particularly around semiconductors, it's several $100 billion.
I think that's right. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It makes the 6 billion sound very, very small. That's very good. Antonio, what about you guys? What about you and Enrique? How's that going?
Well,
have you announced a number or anything?
No, I'm actually happy to share with you. Over the next few years, we're going to invest an additional 3.5 billion building secure manufacturing. Right. We build the largest supercomputer for the United States government that supports both the DoD and DOE. So in the next 18 months, we're going to build the largest 5 supercomputers that will keep the United States ahead of the game, both in life science and AI, but also ahead, owning the entire stack at the national security level.
Great. Are you doing that separately? Are you doing it together or separate?
No, we are totally separate company.
Totally separate, right?
From our side, we invest in the US around $18 billion per year. So if you look at the next five,
that's right.
It will be close to $100 billion. And we are going to be investing in AI at the edge, not only on data centers, but how to make AI available to customers in PCs, in headsets, in devices that they will be using every day. Which is
so it's over $100 billion.
Yes.
And you're doing well. HP is doing really well.
Yes.
That's great.
We're competing hard with Microsoft, but we're doing well.
Are you direct competitors?
Yes.
That's
it. That's why they're on different sides of the table, sir.
The old days would say, why don't you make a deal? I guess now it's not so easy to make a deal.
We can have an arm wrestling match now.
Yeah, right. And Cristiano, you've been amazing, right? Your company with the investments. How are you doing with investments?
We're doing great. I think, Mr. President, you have a great decision. I think when you drove our company to continue to be innovating, and I think we're doing very good. We've been, in addition of doing phones, I think we're now, our chips are going to every car company in the world, all the car companies. We're entering today robotics. There's a lot of growth in robotics and the data center. New smart glasses going to be the future mobile devices. Industrial, I think a lot of the drive towards manufacturing the country is driving a lot of technology for smart manufacturing. We're making chips for that. So I think we're very excited. And I think, like Michael, I think the number of industries our chips are being enabling is driving hundreds of billions of dollar investments in. And most important for us, semiconductor manufacturing is very important. So we are going to be customer of the fabs that are being built in the United States by TSMC and Samsung. So we're just going to keep going forward.
Yeah, those investments are very important, and we are all customers of those fabs.
Those two are my customers.
Yeah.
Memory stuff? Memory?
We don't do memory. We do other products.
Who's the king of memory? Doing fantastically. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
The stock market has set a 51, think of this, 51 all-time record highs during the last 10 months. 51. You guys are big beneficiaries. You're setting the records, right? It's amazing. 51 times we've hit a new high. And in the history of our country, if you think about it, 51 times during the last 10 months. And Bruce, let me ask you, pull these people all together. How's it looking for technology?
A lot of global competition, but you'd rather be playing our hand than any other hand in the world.
I think so. We have a good hand right now, don't we? Joe Biden secured just really much less than $1 trillion of new investments in 4 years. And in 10 months, we secured more than $18 trillion, so 18 times the amount in 10 months what they did in 4 years. And they would have gone negative. They were heading toward negative. In other words, not $1 trillion, but it could have been 3 or 4 or 5 trillion less because people were leaving. So it was a big turnaround. In 10 months, the $18 trillion, it's a record. There's never been a country that's gotten anywhere near that. In the Middle East, when I left the Middle East, we brought back $3 trillion and lots of Boeing airplanes, like 300. And Boeing gave me the award for the greatest salesman in the history of Boeing, which was a nice little award. I have a little plaque. The greatest, I think I've sold 1,000 Boeing planes. Can you believe it? Now all they have to do is make them. Okay, they got to make them, but they will. But we have made historic trade deals with the United Kingdom, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, Japan, the EU, Malaysia, Cambodia, El Salvador, Argentina, Ecuador, Guatemala, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Thailand, and South Korea, and many others. And a lot of it's based on the November 5th election result, which was a massive victory. We won all 7 swing states, the popular vote. We won the Electoral College by a landslide. We won counties. The counties, they do I don't know, to me it's the most accurate of all in many ways. We're 2,700 counties against 525. That's pretty good, right, Cristiano? Pretty good. 2,700 against 525. That's why when you see the maps are all red, except for 2 little blue lines on the right and the left side of the map. They're probably changing too. Americans are great builders, and in the Trump administration, America is once again a country where innovators get a green light. You have the greatest innovators in the world at this table, and representing a lot of their friends who are competitors and friends. But we're really on a big move to get rid of red tape so they can run their businesses and not have to wait 10 years for an approval. In the old days, getting some of these approvals for plants that are already being built would have taken 10, 15, even 20 years prior to rejection. You get rejected. You'd work 20 years and then you'd lose 5 to 4. And we're getting plants approved in a matter of weeks. The biggest plants ever built in a matter of weeks. For every new regulation, we're slashing more than 10 old regulations. So we're not allowing regulations unless they slash 10 old regulations. We did that in the first term, and we cut more regulation than any administration ever. In our first term, we have the all-time record. I think we're exceeding it here. In fact, now it's 1 in 24 is the number we're at. It's 1 in 10 you have to do, otherwise we're not letting you do it. But we're actually up to 1 in 24, so we get rid of 24 regulations for every one. That's not a bad deal, right? And it's been very exciting, actually. But including, we're allowing 100 in the Great Big Beautiful Deal. We're allowing 100% expensing for capital expenditures, including investments in factories and equipment and structure. So including even structure. So that if Michael goes out and builds a factory, you can take it against tax immediately, the whole thing. You don't have to wait 38 years, or do it over a 38-year period. And I think that's what made the first tax cut, which we, by the way, got extended in this tax cut. So, and you add it up, it's the biggest tax cut in the history of our country. But I think that the expensing factor, and it's good for 10 years too, I think that's the, maybe was the reason that so much growth was, there were other reasons, but so much growth was gotten in the first term. So earlier this year, I said that the challenges of our time demand a new spirit of patriotism and national loyalty in Silicon Valley, smart people, and from the whole technology sector. And that patriotism is on huge display here in this room with some of the most brilliant people. And I'd now like to ask Secretary Howard Lutnick to say a few words, and OSTP Director Michael Kratsios also say a few words. And I look forward to hearing from Michael a little bit about this subject. Cristiano, welcome. And Arvind, you'll say something, and I appreciate it. And anybody else wants to say a couple of words, feel free. Good job. So why don't we start with Howard, please?
So the key to America's success is the amazing innovators that we have. I mean, we have invented everything from the light bulb, transistor, GPUs. We are on the edge of everything. And we need to keep being on the edge, and the people at this table and this industry is why America's great. We need to build here. You know, for too many years, we innovated and we let everyone else build our stuff. And we just can't do it anymore. So with President Trump coming and winning the election on November 5th, we changed that, and now we're going to build it here. You've done everything you can, and you've heard trillions and trillions of dollars of technology build coming home to America to protect and defend us and use our innovations here. You're driving interest rates lower, and you're going to continue to drive them lower. That makes it cheaper. It makes it more exciting to build here. You're blowing out the regulatory deep state so that people can build here and do it fast. And the last thing is, because of our investment in energy that drive down the cost of energy for all Americans, including the people who are building here, drive down the cost of energy. It's great for America. Put all of that together, and you're going to see the greatest growth the United States of America has ever seen. You're going to see north of 4% next year, and then it's going to go up from there to 5s and 6s. This president's going to drive the greatest GDP growth, led by the tech sector coming home and driving growth.
Well, thank you. You know, one of the things I'd like to say just before going over to Michael, and this Michael, and then we'll have this Michael, all right? But one of the things I'd like to say is, in the old days, when you announced really good results in this country, the stock market went up. And that's the way it should be. And we're going back to that. Because otherwise you can never really attain true greatness. In other words, GDP at 4. Oh, 4 is so high. Let's raise interest rates and kill it. And we're going to go back to the old days. When we announce great results, it doesn't mean we're going to raise interest rates and try and kill it. It means that instead of 4% GDP or 3%, which I say it's so wonderful, 3%, it should be able to be 20 or 25%. I don't know why it can't be. You shouldn't kill it. And so we hope that if this country announces great results, because you're going to see great results over the next couple of years, all these plants, and I'm not just talking about AI, we have the biggest number of auto plants planned. Toyota just announced $10 billion in plants built, various couple of locations, few locations in the country, just a little while ago. They're all coming here. They're coming here because of tariffs, because they don't want to pay tariffs, but they're coming here because of the election and the mindset. But when we announce good results, the market should go up. Now it's when you announce good results, Michael, the market goes down because they say, oh, that means things are good. That means we're going to kill it by raising interest rates. I think it's really wrong. It should be the opposite of what it is now. It should be the way it used to be. We announce good results, the market should go up, and we should keep driving it up and have it keep going up and let it be much, much bigger, much, much better. And, you know, growth doesn't mean inflation. They're always afraid that, oh, we have, and if there is inflation, that's okay, then we can slow it down. But we should be able to do a lot better than 3 and 4. We're scheduled to be at 4%, which is pretty amazing because we have a you know, deadhead Fed hair. I mean, this guy, the head of the Federal Reserve is a stiff. And, you know, you fight that. It's amazing. We fight that, and yet interest rates are going down, except with him, not too much. He did a rather, I would say, a rather small number that could have been doubled, at least doubled. And that's the other thing. I think the rates for the United States are always the lowest in the world, because without us, there is no world. Without this economy, there's no world. You know, you could go to some of these wonderful countries that you think are so great. Well, one of the reasons they're great is because we allowed them to get rich off of us. We didn't charge them anything. You look at some of the deals, I don't want to say, use Switzerland as an example, but Switzerland paid almost nothing in terms of a tariff or a tax or whatever you want to call it, license. They paid nothing, and you know, they're paying now. They're paying a fair amount. I had them at 39%, but I decided to be nice. I was nice, and I think they like us a little bit better. But the money you're talking about is enormous. Our country is a very rich country. But if we do well, the market should go up and the value of our country should go up. And if we do poorly, the market then should go down. It shouldn't be the opposite. And if we go up, we should encourage it to go up more. And those numbers, when you say, 3% of GDP or 4% of GDP, they should be much higher. So, I've wanted to say it. I do say it. I believe it. And we have to get a mindset that when a country is doing well, you don't want to kill the growth. That's what they're doing. They kill the growth. I don't know if you guys even agree with that. They kill the growth because they're so afraid of inflation. But you can have tremendous growth without inflation. Everything goes up with the growth. But that's not inflation. So I think we can do much better than traditional numbers. And you see that. You see that with what we're doing. We're leading in everything. And now, and remember this, as far as prices are concerned, and they talk about affordability, I inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country. They say it was 48 years, but I say it was the history. What difference? It's 48 years, they were telling me. They said I was being inaccurate because I said the history. I think 48 years is a long time, but it's actually, I disagree. I think it's the history. So in the Biden administration, I inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country, or 48 years. And prices were very, very high. I brought the prices down. We had yesterday 3 states where oil was at $1.99 a gallon. How about that? And with these guys, it was $4, $4.50. In California, it was like $7 because that's a badly run state. But the price for oil and gas and everything else, the price of gasoline was $4.50, $5. And we just hit $1, and now we broke $2. I was looking forward to the couple of states, 3 states. And I will say that when that happens, oil and gas and energy is so big, it's so big a category, you don't even know what number 2 is. There is no number 2. And when you have the prices coming down for energy like that, you've killed inflation and you're lowering prices. So I inherited very simply the highest prices in history, and I'm bringing them down really fast, led by energy. And when energy comes down, everything else comes down. But I've only been here a short while, and we gave them a beautiful, beautiful thing, and they destroyed it. They would have destroyed our country had they been allowed to stay. If we didn't win this election, if we had Kamala, who's the same as Joe, low IQ people, but if we had Kamala, you would have a country that would be right now in ruins. I believe that 100%. Things would be in a state like nobody's ever seen before. Worse than anything you've ever imagined. Worse than 1929, in my opinion. Instead, we have the hottest country in the world, and we're going to keep it that way. But just to finish, we inherited high prices. We're bringing them down very rapidly, and we're bringing them down to very, very good levels. They'll soon be down at very good levels. Michael, please go ahead.
Absolutely. As everyone in this room probably knows very well, leadership in science and technology has been foundational to our economic and national security for decades. And because of the policies that you have championed and the private sector partnerships that you have made, America currently is leading the world in S&T, and it's benefiting all Americans every day. The one thing that I want to remind this group of, and many of you know, the president has been arguing for American leadership in AI well before ChatGPT was even invented. The president signed an executive order on artificial intelligence leadership in 2019, which set the stage for the revolution that we're seeing today. In the past year, we've built on that. We signed out the AI Action Plan in July of this year, which the president launched here in Washington, along with 3 EOs. And I know a lot of that effort is around creating a regulatory environment to allow for companies like yours to thrive and for the applications that you build to have the biggest impact on Americans every day. So thank you for everything that you do, and I know we're going to keep working together to make sure that America is the home for the next great technological discoveries.
Thank you, Michael. And Michael?
Thank you, sir. Well, look, we greatly appreciate the focus the administration has on lowering energy costs. And energy is the substrate of manufacturing at the industrial level and really an incredibly important input to the economy. We can't be competitive without a super low cost energy industry. And had a great meeting earlier today with Secretary Wright and really appreciate all the work that he's been doing. This is, of course, incredibly important when it comes to AI because it does consume a great deal of power. All the semiconductor manufacturing consumes a great deal of power. Another big area of focus for us is how we can take all this great AI technology, the AI stack of the innovative companies here in the United States, and sell that around the world. And I'd like to ask Arvind to speak a little bit more about this. Arvind?
Thank you. So, Mr. President, first, we really would like to thank you for everything you're doing for economic growth, as you said. I completely agree with you. Economic growth then drives a lot of other benefits to everything else. We also want to thank you for all the work you're doing on deregulation and making things easier for business to participate in that growth. Michael spoke of the AI stack. It's incredibly important that under the action plans that you have laid out and Michael Kratzwitz just spoke of, we really help promote the AI stack, which is not semiconductors only. Those are incredibly important, but it's semiconductors, it's software, it's the systems which many of us here build, and it is the software applications on top. The ability to take those to all our friends in countries, so all the friendly countries, is going to be very, very important. And we wish to work with your government to make sure that we can do that, because otherwise we're afraid that competing countries are going to be able to get that stack. So we would say that.
Anything that you're looking at that we can help you with so that you create a bigger and better IBM and hire a lot more people? Anything you need?
A few countries, we'll speak to members of your administration to make sure that those can go and that barriers get lowered for being able to do it quickly. We agree guardrails are necessary, but lower barriers would be very, very helpful.
You mean tariffs?
No.
Because are these countries tariffing you, making your life difficult? Are they doing anything else to make your life difficult?
It's the ability to take certain systems which have semiconductors inside them into these countries. So right now, because we have controls on where all the semiconductors can go, then the entire system is restricted. That's what we want to do. The same as
how many countries do that?
Probably a half dozen. So
I can tell you the countries already. I know.
Yes.
I know every country very well. And we have ways of combating that quickly. So you'll let me know.
And the last part I'd like to say is I'd also like to thank you for all that you're doing to help modernize government itself, because we think that that's incredibly important. You made a number of announcements, but a couple that I'd just like to point out, we worked with Commissioner Frank Bisignano to help make Social Security better. So I would like to thank you for your help on that. And we'll work with him on making IRS.
He's done a fantastic job.
He is. Frank's great.
He's done a great job, Frank. He's had a great career, actually left a tremendous career where his salary, I think, was 100 times greater than it is now. And he was at JP Morgan Chase, and he's doing a fantastic, he did a great job at Social Security, quickly.
And we hope to help him replicate that now at the IRS also.
Very good. Thank you very much. Good job. Cristiano, please.
Yes, just a few points. I think, first of all, Mr. President, thank you for your vision, and thank you for understanding the importance of the American private sector in industry, I think, and the growth of the economy. I want to just build on some of the things that were said by my colleagues. I think we have built probably one of the most advanced technologies in the world, and part of it is because I think the commitment to innovation that we have in the country, but also the fact that it has been American technology for the world. So I think we have an incredible opportunity. When I think about what Michael said about exporting AI, I had conversation with Secretary Howard. Now that the trade deal's been made, is an opportunity to really build on those trade deals and export, I think, American technology. And also, as we think about the technology, it's an important vector to drive the reindustrialization, I think, of the country with technology. So we're incredibly excited about that. I think it's a big opportunity. I think it's the next wave of growth that we can build on those trade agreements. And I think it resonates what also Arvin said about the importance of the American technology stack. And then I was just going to finish with 2 points. There are 2 exciting things happening in the world of technology coming right now. One is as AI become the new form of computing, AI is going not only to the data center, but to everything, to cars, to PCs. And we see now the ability to run models that you can only run AI in the data center. You can run that on a microcomputer, on a computer for Enrique, on a server, but small server on premise. So I think we're going to see the proliferation of AI. The other one is 6G. We had made commitment working with your administration, working with FCC. We're going to accelerate 6G. We're working to launch first in the world in the LA Olympics. And I think that's another opportunity for America to lead in the next wireless evolution. So thank you. I thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the partnership. And we're going to be hard at work, I think, driving that agenda.
So we're into 6G now. I just finished 5G. I was a leader on 5G getting that done. And now they're up to 6.
Let's do it again.
What does that do? Give you a little bit deeper view into somebody's skin? See how perfect it is? I like the cameras the old days. So they just had a nice feature. Now they cover every little. Let's see, Michael, you're in good shape. You're not gonna. But I tell you, it's the 6 is coming, huh?
It's coming.
Does it ever end? And what happens? You'll be into 7, right? Before 6 gets old, you'll be into 7. Anybody have anything else to say? Anybody?
I think that the other thing is we want to thank you as well for the openness of your organization and your team. We always find people that wants to hear what we need and is willing to design programs that will support us. So thank you for.
Well, we're here to serve you. We want you to just dominate the whole world in terms of what you do. It's a very important world, and you're doing that. And we're making it easy for you, and that means you're going to do it faster. It's more jobs, and a lot of good things happen. Right? Go ahead, please.
Mr. President, you made on the call, but in your first term, you actually sponsored the Department of Energy to build the largest systems ever built. And thanks to your sponsorship, the Department of Energy owns the 3 top supercomputers in the world.
Yep.
And we build it with them. And these are systems that can do quintillion operations per second. And that means we can solve
I know.
a lot of.
We made that possible. It's worked out very well. Good.
Solve problems. So now we're going to build the next generation again.
Good. Sounds good to me. Any questions, please?
Mr. President, thank you. Can you explain a little more about this Venezuelan oil tanker and share a little more information?
Well, I'll let the people do it, but you see the result, and I guess they probably have released the pictures by now or pretty soon. You'll discuss that with the appropriate people later on, but no, it was seized for a very good reason.
Sir, there's a new proposal from DHS that would see tourists from a lot of countries have to hand over 5 years of social media history to get a tourist visa. Are you concerned at all that if that's implemented, there would be a decline in tourism next year? And what sort of material do you think is...
We're doing so well. We just want people to come over here and safe. We want safety, we want security, we want to make sure we're not letting the wrong people come into our country. We're getting rid of a lot of bad ones from jails, from mental institutions, drug dealers. And we're getting a lot of bad people, murderers. 11,888 murderers, half of them, almost exactly half of them, committed more than one murder. We're getting rid of them. In some cases, we don't even want to get them out. We put them in jail because we're afraid they're going to come back into our country. We're not going to let them back in. So we've taken a very tough stand. And you see where we've been. Like Washington, D.C. now, people walk down the streets, they go into restaurants at night. It's beautiful. It's like this beautiful thing to see because until I got here, this was a very, very bad place. We had a terrible thing happen 2 weeks ago with terrorism with regard to 2 National Guards people that are so phenomenal. One is no longer with us, and one, amazingly, we weren't looking with great hope on that, that Andrew. And today he got out of bed, actually, got stood up, didn't say anything. It's a little early, but the chances of Andrew, other than his mother who said, nope, he's going to be okay. His mother was the most positive person. And could be that she'll be right. It's pretty amazing. Made progress. It was, both of them were so badly hurt, we never thought that one could survive. So it looks like Andrew's doing pretty well.
The winner of the Nobel Prize dedicated the prize to you, the Nobel Peace Prize. And she left Venezuela at a very, very soon to make it to the ceremony. There is a risk she could be arrested, actually. What would happen if she's arrested? What message do you send, or would you send to Nicolas Maduro?
Well, arrested by who? The Nobel Prize Committee? It sounds like that's probably the ones that would arrest. I don't know anything about it. She was very gracious. She said I should have gotten the Nobel Prize, and I don't, I'm doing this to save lives. I'm not doing it for any other reason. But no, I don't like if she would be arrested. No, I wouldn't be happy with that.
Mr. President, Senate Republicans currently have a healthcare proposal that would take away, let those ACA subsidies expire, and then put about $1,000 in people's HSAs. Do you think that is enough money, and how do you ensure that people who will see those tax subsidies expire won't see their healthcare costs skyrocket?
Well, the Unaffordable Care Act, which is Obamacare, they call it now the unaffordable because it's unaffordable. It used to be called the affordable, but it was never affordable. It was always bad. It was basically designed for the benefit of insurance companies. And what we're doing is we want all of the billions and billions of dollars that went to insurance companies to go directly to the people, and they can buy their own health care. And people love it. I don't know if the Democrats are going to approve it because they want the insurance companies to make money. It was a scam. Obamacare was a scam. But we're going to see. I mean, the Republicans, I can tell you, want the money to go to the people. And we're winning that battle. The Democrats are having a hard time with it because they're in the pocket of the insurance companies. Yes, please.
Yes, you spoke to some European leaders today, I think, sir, about
I did.
Could you tell us about that? And is there a new revised peace plan that Ukraine has presented?
Yeah. The leaders of France we spoke to, and Germany, and UK, all very good leaders, very good friends of mine, and we discussed Ukraine in pretty strong words. And we'll see what happens. I mean, we're waiting to hear answers before we progress. You know, we're not spending any money in Ukraine. We're selling basically missiles and everything else to NATO, and NATO's paying us, and then they distribute it to who they want. I guess they're mostly distributing to Ukraine, but we're not spending money. But you know what we are? We're spending a lot of time and a lot of effort. Because last month, 27,000 soldiers were killed. Both, think of it, 27,000. That's if you take a football game and take half the stadium, that's 27,000. So 27,000 soldiers were killed. Russian and Ukrainian soldiers were killed. And I want to see that stop. We'll find out. Look, there are a lot of things happening right now. A lot of people say it's closer than it's ever been. It's a war that would have never started. If I were president, would have never started. It's a war that should never have started. But we'll have it figured out, I think, within a pretty short
You
period.
say very strong terms, sir. Could you explain that?
Well, I think we had some little disputes about people, and we're going to see how it turns out. And we said before we go to a meeting, we want to know some things. You know, they would like us to go to a meeting over the weekend in Europe, and we'll make a determination depending on what they come back with. We don't want to be wasting time. Sometimes you have to let people fight it out, and sometimes you don't. But the problem with letting people fight it out is you're losing thousands of people a week. It's ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous.
Mr. President, two questions. One, the oil tanker. Who owns that oil tanker?
You'll get that information later.
Okay, and have you spoken to Maduro since your last conversation?
No, I
Or has it
haven't.
only been one conversation?
No.
And when you say that the European leaders want to have a meeting over the weekend, are you talking about with Zelensky or with them?
With Zelensky and us.
And you said in an interview yesterday that you think it's time for Zelensky to start accepting things. What things are you talking about?
I think he has to be realistic, and I do wonder about, how long is it going to be till they have an election? It's a democracy. It's a long time. They haven't had an election in a long time. It's losing a lot of people. And it's possible that the people, if you look at the polls, I will say 82%, there was a poll that came out, 82% of the people are demanding a settlement be made, Ukrainian people. They want to see a settlement be made. I understand that. They're losing thousands and thousands of people a week. They want to see it ended. And I do say, at what point, when do they have an election in Ukraine? That's not casting dispersions on anybody, but they do have a massive corruption situation going on there. And they do say, when are they, people are asking this question, when do they have an election? Are they going to have an election? Or are they going to just keep it going like this? So I think it's time to get that war settled. And I think it's a war that can be settled. But it takes two to tango.
Mr. President, I wonder about the new owners of Warner Brothers Discovery to make changes at CNN, big changes, and have you spoken to Jared about it? What are you doing with him, or get you sort of wall him off a little bit?
So what do you want to know?
What changes do you want to see at CNN under new ownership?
Well, I'm not involved in that. I will be probably involved, maybe involved in the decision. It depends. You have some good companies bidding on it. I think the people that have run CNN for the last long period of time are a disgrace. I think it's imperative that CNN be sold, because you certainly wouldn't want to put people, just leave those people with some money, good money, and CNN, so that they can spend even more money spreading poison, because it's lies. It's a disgrace. So I wouldn't want to see the same company end up with CNN, the same company with money, because right now they don't have too much money. But they have value, I guess, based on the bids. They've got value. But I think CNN should be sold, because I think the people that are running CNN right now are either corrupt or incompetent.
And that'll be a factor in the decision making, because we've got some.
Well, in my mind, but I can be talked out of that by some very talented people that we have, antitrust people. But I just think that the people that have run CNN into the ground, by the way, nobody watches, very few people watch. I don't think they should be entrusted with running CNN any longer. So I think any deal should be guaranteed and certain that CNN is part of it, or sold separately. But I don't think the people that are running that company right now and running CNN, which is a very dishonest group of people, I don't think that should be allowed to continue. I think CNN should be sold along with everything else.
Sir, Leslie, you spoke about affordability earlier in your remarks and yesterday in Pennsylvania. How much more can we expect to see you on the road kind of delivering that message? And are you worried at all about the Democrats winning a couple more things in Miami and Georgia?
I don't worry about it. It's like statistically, it's amazing. When you win the presidency, even if you win by a landslide like we did, and even if you do a good job, and some people say we've done the best opening 10 months in history, in the history of the presidency. I think we have. Who's done better? We ended 8 wars. We have the strongest economy. We have $18 trillion coming in, which is more than any country had, times I think 5 or 6. 18 trillion is a lot even in your standard, right?
Yes, sir.
Even for that guy, 18 trillion is big numbers. But we have $18 trillion coming in. Pretty amazing, right? I think Qualcomm would be very impressed if they had even a little piece of that. So we've done a great job. But for whatever reason, and nobody's been able to give me an answer, when you win the presidency, you seem to lose the midterms. Even if you win the presidency by a lot and you do a great job as president. Some presidents have done good, and they've lost. I think it's like 2 times in the last many, many years it's been won. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense. Usually I can figure things out, but I don't know why, but that seems to be. But other than that, we should win because we're doing great. The economy is roaring. I think the economy is only going to go, better with all this money pouring in. We have factories being built. And forget about AI. We have AI more than anybody. We're leading AI by a lot. But we have many car companies coming in from Canada, from Mexico. They're closing. They're coming in from Mexico. They're coming in from Canada, from Japan, from Europe, all over Europe, Germany, all over Europe. We're doing great. But for whatever reason, It doesn't matter how well they're doing, you know, good and bad. The bad you understand, but even when a president's doing well, they seem to not do well in the midterms. So we're going to try and change it. There should be no reason for it. If anybody at the table can figure out, Bruce, a nice psychological reason, but so I want to win, and winning the midterms is important. People want us to win the midterms, and I think we have great spirit. We should win the midterms, yeah.
Under Joe Biden's administration, and during COVID specifically, Biden removed the safety standards on abortion drugs. Now I'm hearing from a lot of pro-lifers that they're very anxious because yesterday Bloomberg reported that your FDA is slow walking a review of the abortion drugs that Secretary Kennedy promised.
Yeah,
How soon do you want to see that?
I'll find out. I'll ask them.
Do you want to see it?
I don't think they're slow walking anything, but I'll find out. Yeah.
Mr. President,
Any update on the clashes between Thailand and Cambodia, sir?
Yeah, I think I'll have to make a phone call. I was going to say that the Thailand and Cambodia, one of the 8 that I settled, they've been fighting for a long time. They've been fighting for a very long time, many, many, many decades. But I got along great with both. I found they were 2 great leaders, 2 great people, and I settled it once. I think I can do it pretty quickly. I think we're scheduling a phone call tomorrow.
Mr. President.
With Thailand.
On the Fed chair.
With Thailand, if you know, just to answer, Steve, with Thailand and Cambodia, I think I can get them to stop fighting. Who else can do that? Think of it. Settled 8 wars. Every once in a while, one will flame up again, and I have to put out that little flame. I have to put it out, but we're going to put it out again. So I think I'm scheduled to speak to them tomorrow and see if I can. It was unfortunate what happened. I mean, I know exactly what happened. It got it started a little bit, but we'll see if we can put it out.
We're interested in the seizure of this tanker. What happens to the oil on that ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where does it go? What port does it go to?
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You know, you're a good newsman. Just follow the tanker.
Do you know where it was going? Was it going
Follow
to
it.
China?
Get a helicopter and follow the tanker.
Is it true it's going to
But we're
Cuba?
gonna. I assume we're gonna keep the oil.
Mr. President, on Fed Chair, Kevin Hassett said you were going to announce your decision within the next 2 weeks. Is that correct?
Maybe.
Are you doing your interviews with finalists today?
Well, I'm meeting with Kevin Warsh today, so I'm meeting with him. And I sort of have a very good idea what I'm looking for. Again, I'm looking for somebody that will be honest with interest rates. That's all. I just want honesty. Our rate should be much lower. Our rate should be the lowest rates in the world. Because all these countries that you see, you know, with low rates, many of them are low because of us, because they suck so much money out of us. But that's not happening anymore. We should have the lowest rates in the world. And without us, none of them really exist as an economy. I mean, I can show you these really prime, really wonderful countries. They've had nothing but success. It's because they took so much out of the United States. I mean, it's one of those little problems. I want to see that when we do well, we're rewarded for doing well, not the way it's been for the last pretty long period of time.
Are you asking these finalists to pledge to lower rates? Are you asking these finalists to pledge to lower rates if they become the chair?
No, I'll be asking questions and I'll be able to figure it out.
Mr. President, we have 3 countries sending drugs to the U.S., Mexico, Venezuela, and Colombia. And you talked to the president of Mexico, you already talked to Nicolas Maduro. Have you considered talking to the president of Colombia, who you call a drug leader?
No, I haven't really thought too much about him. He's been fairly hostile to the United States, and I haven't given him a lot of thought. He's going to have himself some big problems if he doesn't wise up. Colombia is producing a lot of drugs. They have cocaine factories that they make cocaine, as you know, and they sell it right into the United States. So he better wise up, or he'll be next. He'll be next too. And I hope he's listening. He's going to be next. Yes,
Mr. President.
because we don't like people when they kill people. And they sell drugs. They kill them in the United States. And Colombia is a major manufacturer of drugs, meaning cocaine in particular, as you know.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Multiple House Republicans in recent weeks, days, have been critical of Speaker Mike Johnson. I wanted to ask you if you're still confident in the Speaker to keep his conference together ahead of the midterms, and how often are you speaking about him?
I think Mike Johnson is great. You know, he's had a majority of 2, 3, 4. then back to 2. We actually had 1. So we were 1 heart attack away from disaster. So everybody prayed for everybody's health. I think Mike Johnson's been a fantastic speaker. I mean, a very hard job because, you know, when you have a small majority, and we got the biggest bill in the history of our country approved, the Great Big Beautiful Bill. I call it the Great Big Beautiful Bill. There are different names for it, but to me it's a Great Big Beautiful Bill because it gives the biggest tax cuts in history, the biggest regulation cuts in history. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. I think Mike Johnson's been a great speaker. I think few people could have done that job.
Do you want to see another big package move through Capitol Hill in the next year, or?
Well, we don't need it because we got everything. You know, this was supposed to be 17 bills. And I think it was my idea, but you know, with the concurrence of people that have done this a long time. And I said, why don't we make it 1 bill? Because it's very hard to get things approved by the Democrats. And it worked out because there was something good for everybody. If we would have done 17 bills, we wouldn't have gotten 1/3 of them approved. It was something great for everybody in the one, you know, the Great Big Beautiful Bill.
If I could follow up, yes, good to see you, Mr. President. If I could follow up on the event last night in Pennsylvania, huge crowd turned out there.
Big crowd.
It seemed like Rally Trump was in prime condition last night. You enjoyed it. Can you just give me your thoughts on that? Then I do have a question on the gold card.
Last night was amazing in Pennsylvania. We had a tremendous crowd. It was like freezing. And the people, the thousands of people on the sidewalk trying to get in, or the streets. It was an amazing evening, actually, and I think people really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. You could tell that.
I can tell that you enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it. I really did. Well, you know, it's easy to enjoy when you do a good job, and you know, when you can talk about things in a very positive way. It's hard not to say it. We have potentially the greatest economic boom in the history of the world. It's being built right now. And when it opens, there will be nothing ever in history like what's happening in our country. And, you know, Washington, D.C. is safe, and Memphis is now. Look at Memphis. Crime is down 60% in Memphis. We just got there 3 weeks ago. And we're going to have New Orleans. New Orleans we just sent a group of people there, and crime is down 28% in about 3 days. No, we do a good job, you know, and these are central casting people. These people they're very tough people if they have to be. They're very good, they're great patriots, but they are the toughest, and they don't take any nonsense. And every place we go, we knock down crime. Too bad that we're not invited more into Chicago, because we could save Chicago very quickly. But even that, we're doing it on a minimal basis until, you know, at some point we'll just go in and do what we have to do if the governor doesn't wise up. They got a bad governor, they have a bad mayor. I would say they're both incompetent, but it's hard to believe that people don't want to stop crime. We could stop the crime in Chicago in about 2 weeks. Go ahead.
My question is on the gold card. And I apologize if I missed the answer to this. Is there a limit to how many gold cards these companies can buy?
Howard?
So the program is part of the already approved visas. So we're just going to have great people come into this country. You know, the average green card holder earned less than the average American. So they were more likely to be on the dole and be on our assistance programs than average Americans. And the idea is from President Trump, he wants to raise it, bring in the best people into America. So same visas, but now just full of the best people.
Basically, it's a green card, but much better, much more powerful, a much stronger path. And a path is a big deal. Have to be great people, but much stronger path. And it also, in addition to that, helps companies, because not only for companies, but if IBM gets somebody #1 in his class at the Wharton School of Finance, and you're dying to get the person, but you can't guarantee the person stays in the country, because oftentimes they'll say, I'm sorry, sir, you got to get out of here, you have 24 hours, right? And you say, where's my employee? Now IBM can buy a card, and that employee can be there for essentially a very long period of time.
Mr. President, could you tell Bruce?
It's so needed for the companies. You know, it's needed for others, but really, it's basically a much better form of a green card. And you can't get green cards. They are impossible to get. This is much better than a green card. Yeah.
Yes, so did you tell Bruce Blakeman not to run for governor, or that she should think about not running for governor?
I haven't spoken to, first of all, he's a friend, she's a friend. These are two great people running. In a way, I hate to see them running against each other. I hope they're not going to be damaging each other. But Elisa's fantastic and Bruce is, they're two fantastic people. And I always hate it when two very good friends of mine are running. And I hope there's not a lot of damage done. Sometimes it works the other way. The victor ends up being much stronger because of it. A lot of times that happens in politics.
You think you'll step in a couple months after you see who performs?
Well, I think in New York we have a convention toward the end of February, and I think you'll know pretty much at the end of February what's going to happen. And I'll probably have to, you know, do what I want to do. But I hope he's running now, as you know, and she's running. We have two very talented people. Either one should win against the Democrats.
Mr. President, Legacy's story lately focuses on one of your cabinet members predicting that you're going to fire this one or you're going to get rid of that one. Of all your cabinet members, who would you perceive as the most under attack?
Well, I think my cabinet's fantastic. I read the same stories that I'm unhappy with this one or that one, and I'm not. I think the cabinet's done a great job. I read a story that I was unhappy with Pete because he was attacking drug dealers. I said, that's not exactly right. I would say very much the opposite. Pete Hegseth has been phenomenal. I read a story recently, I'm unhappy with Christie. I'm so happy with it. I mean, we have a closed border. We have a border that's the best border in the history of our country. Why would I be unhappy? She's fantastic, actually. No, we have a fantastic cabinet. Really fantastic cabinet. I mean, Lutnick I'll have to think about. No, can't have everything. Can't have everything. He's doing great. Well, Howard's done really well, and Scott's done really well. We have just a fantastic cabinet. I'll tell you who's doing a great job is Linda McMahon. We're bringing education back to the states where it belongs. Education is going, we can't do any worse than we're doing right now. Let the states run it. You know, if you go back to some of our states that have run so well, so good, I would say 40 of them. And then you'll have trouble with 5, and you'll have bigger trouble with another 5. But you have 35 or 40 states that will run education as good as Norway or Denmark, Sweden. We have some, you know, the heads of the list are Denmark, Norway, Sweden, a few others. I think if you go to Iowa and you go to Indiana and you go to, I can name a lot of states, I think it would be almost the equivalent to, maybe better. But you can't run a school system in Iowa from Washington, D.C. Yeah.
So the Gaza plan, when do you expect to announce members of the Board of Peace, the leadership of that?
Well, we'll do it early next year. And the Board of Peace are going to, it'll be one of the most legendary boards ever. Everybody wants to be on it. It's mostly going to be, I guess, you know, we weren't thinking about it that way, but they want to all do it. Basically, it'll be the heads of the most important countries.
Mr. President.
They all want to be on. It wasn't really planned. We, you know, we thought we were going to get very distinguished people that do that kind of thing for a living. But really, it looks like it's turning out to be, they want to be on the heads, the kings and the presidents, prime ministers, they all want to be on the Board of Peace.
Mr. President, on the video follow-up to last night's rally, can you clarify, you have called the affordability crisis as a Democratic hoax, but you also want to make America affordable again?
No, the word that they use is a hoax, and because they're the ones that caused the problem. I'm talking about when you know, you're trying to say it a different way. Now, it's pretty simple, though, if you listen. It's a hoax where they created the problem. They're the ones that gave the high prices. So when they use the word affordability, they shouldn't be using that word because they're the ones that created this problem. They created the highest inflation in history, and they created the highest prices in history. And now we have to get those things down. But when they go, they look and they say affordability. They never discuss it. They just say the election's about affordability. Well, it may very well be. I think it's also about still the border. You have to remember the job. You know, the sad thing is, for 7 months, we've had no people come through our border. Nobody can even believe it. 0 people. And the people that do that...
Alrighty, you have been listening in there to President Trump fielding questions from the White House, of course, after that roundtable event on technology. A number of CEOs and leaders from a number of technology-related companies there. We do have a lot of headlines we are going to get to. There's just a few of them on your screen. There we go. We have this new development that we're following within the last few moments. You heard the president receive questions about it, but the U.S. striking an oil tanker in Venezuela, I should say near Venezuela. So that is a headline, of course, we're following. And that's why I want to take you to this article here just to cover a little more on it, because it is coming in as soon as the president, of course, speaking there. Yeah, announcing it. I want to show you this article from Reuters. It reads, quote, "The U.S. has seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela," President Donald Trump said on Wednesday. A move that raised oil prices and is likely to further inflame tensions between Washington and Caracas. That is kind of this pretty big city in Venezuela. Let me see if there we go. There's an updated look at my screen there. He said this is in that meeting we were just looking at, watching for quite some time. He said, quote, "We've just seized a tanker off the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large, largest one ever, actually, and other things are happening," unquote. Trump has ordered a massive U.S. military buildup in the region, including an aircraft carrier, fighter jets, and tens of thousands of troops. The seizure could signal new and intensifying efforts to go after Venezuela's oil, the country's main source of revenue. 3 U.S. officials, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said the operation was led by the U.S. Coast Guard. They did not name the tanker, which country's flag it was flying, or exactly where the interdiction took place. British Maritime Risk Management Group Vanguard said the tanker skipper was believed to have been seized off Venezuela early Wednesday. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on the tanker for what Washington said was involvement in Iranian oil trading when it called the Odessa there. News coming in, of course, here's all of the news. The impact on oil, of course, saying that prices could rise after the strike on a tanker just moments ago. So we're going to keep our eyes on it. That is for sure. And watch whatever comes about this. Again, that article there from Reuters. We'll keep our eyes poised there. Take a look live here in Brookland. School getting out about 14 minutes ago. Traffic still looking a little backed up there if you look on the other side of School Street. As you watch it there. We are going to monitor it, of course. We'll keep our eye wherever things go here. We are also waiting on a congressional menorah lighting ceremony to begin. Of course, that's in for Hanukkah. We're going to watch that, see whenever it comes. You're watching Brookland News Live. Of course, we have been on the air now for quite some time because there were 2 big breaking events. Of course, the Federal Reserve lowering rates. That's another headline we are following. I do want to turn, though, to yet some more local news. We're learning that the Brendan Kelly, the system president at ASU, is exiting his role there. This is an article from Eastern Michigan University, EMU. That's the university he's joining, and how we all got this news. There's a picture of him. That's Dr. Brendan Kelly there. It reads, quote, and I'll just kind of scroll down, read a little, that first paragraph here to just get the big story out of this, but it says, the Eastern Michigan University Board of Regents today elected Dr. Brendan Kelly as the 24th president of the Eastern Michigan University. welcoming home a two-time alumni whose career in higher education leadership, public service, and community engagement reflects both the resilience and ambition of EMU's mission. His appointment also marks a special homecoming with his wife, Dr. Teresa Kelly, herself a two-time EMU alumni, I should say, and longtime educator. He is set to join the university on March 1st, 2026 as president-elect before beginning official duties as president upon the retirement of President James Smith. That all occurring next spring. You see that image with his wife here, as you just heard there in that article. Both alumni of Eastern Michigan University. So that's another story that we're keeping an eye on right now. Let's take it to the next one. We're learning the Federal Reserve has cut rates by I should say a quarter of a percentage point. We were watching when we first came on the air, of course, that breaking news. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell was speaking. This is the third time in the row that the Federal Reserve has lowered rates. It went from 3.75 to 3.5. So again, just a quarter of a percentage point there. Something we are going to continue monitoring. Plus, happening tomorrow, we won't be here tomorrow. Kind of foreshadowing what I was going to say at the end of the broadcast. But the Senate is planning to vote on the Affordable Care Act. Nothing American. Nothing American in the title. I should clarify there. So I didn't want to sound like I was against or for the bill, but Affordable Care Act subsidies on Thursday. We will wait for that when we join you again. Likely going to be next week. We'll see where that goes. Lot of headlines still following, though, on Brookland News Live here. We do have a lot still to get to. Excuse me, I should say, there has been a lot of news because the Senate met earlier today for health care. The Senate is actually in session right now. Give me a second and we'll take you there. The Senate is in session, and I would be extremely interested to what they're speaking about, of course, following these Venezuelan boat attacks. Why don't we listen in here for just a moment? Again, this is live on the Senate floor.
Even if you, for some reason, agree with President Trump with respect to the drug boats, despite their fanciful legal theories, what this resolution says is don't spend taxpayer dollars to take military action against Venezuela. There's no argument that a U.S. attack on Venezuela doesn't constitute an act of war that does come under the jurisdiction of this Senate under the Constitution of the United States. Now, all of us would like to see a different leader in Venezuela. Maduro is an authoritarian, he's a dictator. He's not a legitimate president, but that doesn't mean that we go after every leader who is not legitimately elected by the people of their country. In fact, this president is cozying up to dictators and authoritarians all over the world. In fact, if you just read their national security strategy that came out last Friday, you'll see it completely abandons the idea that the United States will stand up to dictators and authoritarians. Abandons the idea that we stand up for democracy and freedom and human rights and the rule of law. It's a document that actually greenlights cozying up to people like Maduro. So what they're doing is using the American military in an attempt of outright regime change. And I just read the words of James Madison, who really put it best back in 1793 when he wrote, and I quote, "In no part of the Constitution is more wisdom to be found than in the clause which confides the question of war or peace to the legislature and not to the executive. The trust and temptation would be too great for any one man," end quote. As I said earlier, Mr. President, Donald Trump's been asked directly whether he has to comply with the Constitution of the United States, and he said he doesn't know. It is our obligation to uphold our duties under the Constitution of the United States. That's what Senator Merkley's resolution does. It says we shouldn't be spending any of our country's precious resources in going to war against Venezuela unless this Congress undertakes its responsibility and were to decide to declare war. In my view, going to war against Venezuela is a very bad idea. Let us not simply slide into it through negligence. That's what we're trying to avoid through this resolution, and I yield the floor.
Senators speaking today, they're on the convening, I should say, speaking, of course, after this oil tanker strike near Venezuela. We were just talking about it a few moments ago. We're going to keep our eyes on everything with that. In the meantime, a quick break. More to come right here on Brookland News Live. Welcome back in here to Brookland News Live. I'm Jackson Mitchell. It is so good to be with you. We do have a lot of things we're monitoring. I want to note the House and Senate are in session, of course, following that oil tanker strike near Venezuela. We just heard a few remarks from a senator speaking on it. There's a look at both the House and the Senate. Here's what we'll do first here. We'll listen into the House of Representatives for just a moment, and we will await to hear from, I should say, this congressional menorah lighting ceremony that we are expecting to wait on. So again, we'll go to the House first here for just a moment.
Drone attacks from a major seaport would pose serious threat to our national security, and I appreciate the good work done in the bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time.
And I reserve.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Washington. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself the balance of our time. And the first thing I want to do, we have mentioned repeatedly acquisition reform, which is such a huge undertaking and took a long time. We did a lot of meetings with a lot of different defense contractors, think tanks, former people at the Pentagon to really get an understanding of exactly what's going on so that we could fix it. And fix it means moving faster, getting more innovative technologies more quickly. But there are two people. The staff on the House Armed Services Committee is outstanding. Collectively, I thank all of them. I cannot possibly name all of them, but I really do want to name Phil McNaughton and Lynn Williams, who are the two members of the staff who worked on acquisition reform, worked on all those nitty-gritty details that are very difficult to understand to help us produce such a great product. So I want to publicly thank both of them for their incredible work on this issue. I do support this bill. That does not mean that I don't have concerns. I do. The biggest concern I have is that the Pentagon being run by Secretary Hegseth and by President Trump has simply not been accountable to Congress or accountable to the law. I mean, I guess it started with Signalgate when Secretary Hegseth put on an unsecure channel sensitive classified information that could place our troops at risk. The Inspector General did a report on that that concluded exactly that Secretary Hegseth had unnecessarily placed our troops at risk. His response to this was to say, I'm completely exonerated, no problem. Didn't even try to fix it. And also, this Pentagon, unlike any Secretary of Defense that I've dealt with, simply has not given Congress the information we are supposed to receive and given us the ability to do the level of oversight that we're supposed to do. Now, in this bill, I mentioned there are things that try to force that forward, and I think that's a positive step. It's not enough. To begin with, it is in the law that you are supposed to transmit execute orders when the White House tells the Pentagon what it wants to do to Congress. It's in the law. Within 30 days you have to do that. It's not really complicated. It's not a big deal. They just don't do it. And we've been asking over and over again. The lack of respect for the law out of this Pentagon is a huge problem. And let's start with actually one other fact. It is the Department of Defense. It is not the Department of War. The law is very clear on that point. We passed a law that called it the Department of Defense. Now, if you want to call it the Department of War, I think that's a god-awful idea for a whole bunch of different reasons. But okay, come back to Congress, let's do it. They didn't do that. They just changed it because the law doesn't matter to them. And that has implications. It causes problems. We are supposed to do our oversight for a reason. And some of those problems are bore out in a variety of different ways. We have the National Guard engaged in domestic law enforcement all across this country. They're not trained for that. They're not supposed to be doing it. It's a violation of the Posse Comitatus law, and it's bad policy. But it also means that the National Guard can't do the job that we're actually paying them to do, which is to train service members to be ready for the fight. They don't have any training dollars. I met with the TAG, the Adjutant General for the state of Washington, but they told me they're not able to train because all that money is going to have our National Guards members stay in hotel rooms all around Washington, D.C., Memphis, Los Angeles, New Orleans. And that is something that shouldn't be happening, and we should have greater accountability. I'm also concerned about this whole issue of merit. You know, we've heard that we have to get rid of DEI because it undercuts merit. And yet we have generals, inspector generals, judge advocate generals being fired all over the Pentagon without explanation. Many of them clearly highly qualified people. C.Q. Brown, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Houck, who was the head of the Cyber Command and NSA Combined Command. Very talented people. Was that based on merit?
Okay, you're listening in there to Representative Adam Smith, the Democrat from Washington, here debating on some legislation. The House lawmakers, of course, debating on some legislation on the Pentagon, as you heard him there talking about it. Here's what we're going to do here. We're going to toss over to the Senate floor where where senators are speaking. They just convened after these boat attacks, and some of them expected to be speaking, of course, on these attacks. We'll watch that. I want to note just another feed. We are just getting in. My apologies. This is the wrong feed. Okay, give me one moment, everyone. This is live news for you. So I just accidentally had the wrong feed. It pulled up at the wrong time here. So If you'll give me just a moment, I will get that pulled up for you guys. Maybe, there we go, I see it. There is a committee in the House, the House Judiciary Committee, um, meeting right now on fighting Obamacare subsidies. I should say fighting Obamacare subsidy fraud. I wanted to go to that because I know at this point in time it is a very relevant topic considering the Senate, not the House, but the Senate is expected to bring up a vote on all of this tomorrow. So I wanted to just note we have all of these different feeds, specifically a lot of them over on Capitol Hill. We'll listen into this House Judiciary Committee for a moment. If I see something from the Senate that we need to go to, or the House, we'll go to it.
45% of all exchange enrollees took no action and were automatically re-enrolled. Given widespread improper enrollment and many enrollees unaware of their coverage, we would expect many to never use their plan. The Biden administration didn't release information on zero-claim enrollees. Fortunately, in August, the Trump administration did. What did we find? A surge in enrollees who never used their plan. No doctor visit, no prescription, no lab work. In 2024, nearly 12 million enrollees did not use their plan a single time, up from fewer than 4 million in 2021. Overall, 35% of all exchange enrollees never used their plan, and 40% of fully subsidized enrollees did not have a single claim. Zero-claim exchange enrollees are more than double what occurs in a normal health insurance market and are double the rates before the COVID-era subsidy expansion. There are unquestionably millions of phantom enrollees in the exchanges. Federal taxpayers sent more than $35 billion to insurers in 2024 for people who never used their plan. The One Big Beautiful Bill took some important steps to improve exchange program integrity. But the best way to reduce the fraud and waste is for the COVID-era subsidy boost to expire as scheduled. That would still leave in place extremely generous subsidies that would cover the vast majority of premiums and that grow more generous over time on autopilot. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. And now we will move on to Dr. Bai.
Chairman, ranking members, and members of the subcommittees. Thank you for the honor of testifying. My views do not represent Johns Hopkins or its affiliates. In a study soon to be published in JAMA Health Forum, my colleagues and I have found that from 2014 to 2023, 10-year period, Obamacare premium subsidies grew from under $20 billion to $83 billion. So this year is going to be $130 billion. Number two, for subsidized plans, the taxpayer share rose from 29% to 74%. Three, unsubsidized plans lost appeal. Their market share shrank by about a quarter. So taxpayers spent hundreds of billions of dollars on Obamacare subsidies, but did the money go to the right place? GAO, DOJ, Paragon Institute, and others have found the answer is no. What they found is actually only a tip of the iceberg. Fraud is like cockroach infestation. Once we see one, there are more. Subsidy fraud happened because government agencies have little incentive to care when they spend taxpayers' money. And the insurers and brokers have no incentive to stop it. As we discuss subsidy, we should always remember the root problem is the unaffordable, low-value Obamacare itself. It was originally sold to American people as affordable. President Obama promised premiums would go down by $2,500. At that time, many economists already predicted unaffordability as we are experiencing today. Through numerous regulations, Obamacare damaged both the provider market and the insurance market. Consolidation, stagnation, high prices, and high premiums followed. Some people blame private companies, but the private companies are merely responding to the bad incentives created by Obamacare. Others blame FTC for consolidation, but by the time mergers acquisition transactions reach FTC, it's already too late. Obamacare has made the soil so toxic that only large entities can survive. That is why Obamacare is both a taxpayer fraud and consumer deception. The COVID-era enhanced subsidy used the taxpayers to lure higher-income consumers, enrollees, into unaffordable plans that they would not have bought otherwise, without addressing any underlying unaffordability, and also set them up as political pawns for another future premium cliff. So this is also consumer deception and taxpayer fraud. Obamacare defrauds taxpayers 3 times. First, paying for expensive premium subsidies. Second, paying those fraudsters. Third, paying high price and premiums for their own health care caused by Obamacare. Except for a small number of people who benefited politically and financially from Obamacare, all Americans lose. Patients are deprived of affordability and access that the free market could have brought. Physicians, entrepreneurs, innovators, and American workers can't reach their productivity potential. Our employment, economy, and global leadership suffered. Obamacare fraud was created by Congress and can only be fixed by Congress. First, open the book and let the public help detect and deter subsidy fraud. Second, most importantly, invigorate healthcare markets. Let the patient control their healthcare dollars. Let providers compete on level the playing field. Let insurers design and offer plans that consumers actually want, and deregulate and unburden all players. Hundreds and millions of Americans want better health and a lower price. Countless builders want to compete, innovate, and earn returns, but their hands are tied by Obamacare. Members of Congress, please unleash American dynamism into healthcare and bring true access and affordability to all. Thank you.
Dr. Bai, thank you. Next, we will ask Professor Cooper. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Jordan, Chairman Van Drew, Chairman Fitzgerald, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee. My name is Zach Cooper. I'm a health economist and professor at Yale University, where my research focuses on understanding the drivers of healthcare spending growth in the United States and how healthcare spending impacts the wider economy. Today, I'm testifying here on my own behalf, not on behalf of Yale University, and the views I'm going to express are my own. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here. A decade ago in my health economics class, when I taught my students about the relationship between health insurance, health, and mortality, what I told them was health insurance is fundamentally a financial tool. I was wrong. A decade later, my views have changed because the research has changed. The clearest evidence we have now is that enrolling an American in an Affordable Care Act plan on the exchanges makes them less likely to die. The enhanced ACA subsidies that help approximately 22 million people in this country purchase plans are set to expire at the end of the year. The people getting health insurance on the exchanges are farmers, they're ranchers, they're cooks in small restaurants, they're contractors who run their own businesses. If those subsidies end, the premiums people pay are going to skyrocket, and approximately 4 million people are going to lose their coverage. Extending those subsidies matters. But if we focus only on whether the subsidies remain in place, we're having the wrong conversation. The real problem we're facing in this country is the underlying cost of healthcare. The growth in healthcare spending is what makes the subsidies necessary in the first place. It's driving up premiums for employer-sponsored health insurance coverage, driving up premiums on the exchanges. Rising healthcare spending is crushing families, it's slowing wage growth, it's reducing employment for Americans earning less than $100,000 a year who are working outside the healthcare sector. As I've said, healthcare spending is literally crushing the American dream. Next year, premiums for employer-sponsored plans are expected to increase 10%. Premiums on the exchanges are projected to rise 18%. The premium growth is largely being driven by the growth we're seeing in hospital and provider prices. I want you to think mergers, staffing shortages, and tariffs on medical devices. And then there's the increasing use of GLP-1s. As the Congressional Budget Office has said, the exchange plans are seeing a sharper increase in premiums than the employer plans precisely because of the uncertainty over the expiration of the ACA subsidies. Insurers had to factor in the risk that if the subsidies expired, healthier people would be less likely to buy insurance on the exchanges, which is going to lead to a sicker insurance risk pool. So price growth is the biggest problem we're facing. Over the last 2 decades, prices in the hospital sector, as an example, have grown faster than prices in virtually any other sector of the US economy. We've seen huge numbers of hospital mergers, mergers of hospitals and physician practices, mergers of pharmacy benefits managers. This is what the problem is that we're facing, and there are practical steps Congress could take to address this. The first is introducing so-called site-neutral billing. Medicare often pays more, sometimes double, for the identical services when they're delivered in a hospital versus in an independent physician's office. This encourages consolidation, it raises prices, it drives up premiums. A second is increasing funding for antitrust enforcement. Increasing enforcement budgets turns out to be cost-effective for the federal government. It makes a difference. Finally, I think we need to begin serious exploration of larger healthcare reforms that could be implemented over the next decade. During the shutdown, one idea that briefly surfaced was a bipartisan commission to study ways to lower healthcare spending in this country. That commission shouldn't be a footnote. It's essential. Healthcare costs are crushing your constituents. Now, a brief word on fraud. As the GAO report makes clear, there is a fraud risk on the exchanges. And in 2024, CMS took action to suspend 850 agents and brokers from the federally run marketplaces because they had a reasonable suspicion of fraud. We shouldn't tolerate fraud. We should work tirelessly to stop it. However, my review or my read of the literature is that fraud is not the primary driver of the growth we're seeing right now in healthcare spending. What's really driving premium growth is growth in healthcare providers' prices. We as a country have failed to take the necessary steps to make healthcare affordable for people in this nation. My insurance is good. I'm going to assume that most of the folks in this room have pretty good insurance coverage. The reason I think that subsidies are important is because lower and middle class and lower and middle income Americans shouldn't be left uninsured or stuck paying astronomical premiums because policymakers, healthcare purchasers like employers, have failed to make the tough choices that need to be made to rein in healthcare costs in this country. Subsidies alone aren't a solution. What they do is buy us time. The point is to use the time that they provide to build a system where coverage is affordable because care is affordable. So I'm delighted to talk about the steps we could take as a country to make healthcare more affordable. Thanks for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
I thank the gentleman. I am now going to recognize the ranking member for his statement. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize a little bit. We cannot control what happens on the floor. Things took much longer today. We're going to have another voting session. We are going to attempt to have 2 people, to be as fair as we can, on either side of the aisle speak, and that's going to wrap the hearing up. Otherwise, we'd have to come back, and everybody has previous commitments. So please accept my apology in advance to members on both sides of the aisle and to the witnesses. I am truly sorry about this. I was looking forward to a robust, thorough, full-throated debate on this. I really was. It didn't happen. The gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And Professor Cooper, let me just pick up with what you just said. You testified that it was actually growth in healthcare prices and insurance prices that is really driving the cost increases, not so much fraud. But then you mentioned that there were 850 insurance agents and brokers who were suspected of fraud, waste, and abuse, who had been removed by the Biden administration. And then, this is somewhat of a bombshell, I think, tucked in the GAO report, all 850 of those shady insurance agents and brokers accused of fraud were allowed back into the marketplace that they were suspected of defrauding. Did I hear that right?
That's my understanding, yes.
Well, I know you don't think fraud is the big deal here, but that can't be a sound practice, can it be, to have the Trump administration restoring potentially fraudulent brokers and agents to the government, to the program?
If your goal, Congressman Raskin, is to reduce fraud, that's not what I would do.
Okay, so Mr. Bogdoyan, let me come to you. You identify in your report potential risks for fraud in the ACA program. Just to be clear, are those kinds of potential risks you identified unique to the ACA program, or are those potentially present in all healthcare programs or all government programs?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for asking it. You know, the indicators for identity proofing and eligibility determination, those are the key ones that pretty much run the gamut of any kind of a
All right, good. And so just to follow up on that, this also is not something new that's taking place now or was not new in the last administration. You identified that potential risk of fraud went back to 2014, right?
That's when we first started this work, sir, yes.
Okay, so it seems to me that really this hearing should be about what is the administration doing to confront this risk of abuse that has been, in place for more than a decade. So can anybody answer what Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at HHS and Mehmet Oz are actually doing about the potential kinds of fraud that go back to 2014? I don't know. Dr. Blaze, can you answer that?
Yes, thank you for that question, Congressman. The administration did a final rule on exchange program integrity that included a lot of policies that would reduce the fraud. One of them was to have a $5 minimum payment, to review people's eligibility prior to continuing enrollment, to address issues with auto re-enrollment. That rule was stayed by one judge, so it wasn't in effect. The reconciliation bill actually has three important provisions to address some of the fraud. It will require enrollees starting in 2028 to take action prior to being auto re-enrolled, so the insurer won't be able to just keep them in the plan. The enrollee will have to do something.
Yeah.
It addresses the Biden administration opened up a enrollment for anyone claiming income in a certain category at any point in the year. And I mean, the GAO report showed just how vulnerable the exchanges were. So that is called the special enrollment period, significantly opened up the opportunity for fraud.
Let me just stop you because I'm running out of time here. The United States District Court in Maryland struck down that rule, state enforcement of that rule, as I understand it, right? And that was based on the report that you prepared? Is that the Paragon report? Am I getting that right?
No, so there were commentators that cited the Paragon report, and so the judge in his decision said that CMS didn't do an adequate explanation of describing the policy. There was also another judge in a Massachusetts court that looked at the same issue and threw out the challenge.
Okay, but so let me, here's what the court said, this is not really my field, but it said, defendants are not free to support a rule change with data of questionable validity and limited relevance and then refuse to engage with commenters' reasonable concerns that the data fails to support the conclusion the agency drew from the data. And so the court essentially rejected the underlying methodology and the data that was collected.
Well, the court didn't look at the Paragon report. The court looked at the commentators that wrote about the Paragon report. And I can tell you, Congressman, CBO has cited that report in their work. CBO has estimated improper enrollment in the exchange, and CBO's estimates are consistent with what Paragon produced.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And I just hope that the administration will take the problem of fraud and abuse seriously and work on it because the tools exist now. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Chair, and I yield back to you.
I thank the ranking member. I'm just going to ask a couple of questions quickly because I want a couple other members to be able to speak. Real quickly to all of you, is the GAO a nonpartisan organization? Mr. Bogdoyan.
Absolutely.
Dr. Blaze.
Yes.
Nonpartisan. It's not a Republican organization. Dr. Bai. Dr. Bai? Yes. Okay, thank you. Professor Cooper?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Did the GAO, Dr. Blaze, I'll ask you this question, say that dead people were receiving benefits?
They did.
Okay. Did the GAO say that fraudsters, brokers, and agents were misusing the system, getting benefits themselves, and moving people into plans they don't want?
Yeah, the GAO report showed significant vulnerabilities with the exchange.
Did the GAO show, nonpartisan, that money was going to Social Security numbers, not families, to multiple numbers of Social Security numbers from multiple individuals, and they were receiving subsidies, and it couldn't be possible?
Yeah, I mean, tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my first point, and the point I wanted to make as well, I think that we have UC. Can you please state
Yes,
that?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for unanimous consent for the record, this article is titled "The Great Obamacare Enrollment Fraud." This is a Paragon Health Institute paper led by our witness, Brian Blaze. And the paper takes a deep dive into the Affordable Care Act and explains how it is susceptible to fraud, opening the door to insurance brokers to take advantage of the marketplace.
I thank the gentleman without objection, and I just want to say briefly, and then we're going to move on to some other questions. That's what this hearing's about, and I wish we had more time. I know people have different visions of what healthcare should be in the United States of America, but we have a system now that's wrought with fraud, that doesn't work, that isn't right, that's taking money from good American people and giving it to people who are fraudulent in so many different ways. Individuals, insurance companies, brokers, agents, and man, people are tired of it. And we owe them
Mr.
to
Chairman,
do
can I just-
better. So I'm on my time, please.
Oh, are you? Okay.
I am.
It wasn't working.
So for that reason, I think regardless of what you feel, man, and I hope, and I'm not even going to ask you because I'm not out to embarrass anybody, I hope that every member on the other side read the entire GAO report. I didn't know that was all that was in there. It was startling, it was scary, it was of concern, and Republicans didn't write the damn thing. It came from a nonpartisan government organization that just does what's right. Sometimes I don't like what they do, but they do what they think is right and tell the truth. With that, I will yield to Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bigdillion, you talk about fraud, the GAO report. In that GAO report, is there anything there that suggests that the premium tax credit should be eliminated?
No, that is not part of our work.
Okay.
We're not looking at policy or viability, sir.
Okay, and I'm going to come back to Professor Cooper. You talked about subsidies being important to cover with health care, lower class, middle class. We're talking about working class families in this country who, when these premiums, tax credits expire, they will essentially be uninsured. That's really the issue here. Insurance for working class families, not about fraud, because there's a lot of fraud in a lot of areas in this government. But to go after health care for working class families, that's what we're talking about today. They're going to expire, without a doubt. I want to see each and every one of us up here what kind of phone calls we're going to get from our constituents when they end up not being able to pay for their health care in the richest country in the world with the most advanced medical technology in the world. So, Ms. Cooper, let me ask you a question. Senators are talking about health care savings plans as opposed to tax credits. How is this going to enable Americans to afford health care?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. I don't think they do. I don't think they fundamentally address three core issues. The first is it still exposes consumers to significant out-of-pocket costs. If you look at the plans people are going to enroll in, they're going to have out-of-pocket maximums for individuals at $10,000, for families around $20,000. We're not going to
Small business owners, entrepreneurs, their employees, how will this tax credit cancellation help them afford health care?
Yeah, the health savings accounts won't make getting insurance easier. We're going to see premiums for a couple making $85,000 who are 60 years old jump by $20,000. It's not going to help those people.
So let's talk about this red herring fraud. there is fraud. Are individuals insured getting rich off this fraud? Getting a subsidy in their health care? Are they using it to finance their vacations? Or are we talking about an industry with brokers that are essentially making money? 850 that were suspended. How many of those individuals actually spent time in jail or actually were able to cough up those illegally gotten gains? Anybody here tell me? How many of those folks spent a day in jail? Gave back ill-earned savings, earnings that they got fraudulently. We're talking about fraud here today, and nobody went to jail. So how serious really are we about fraud versus insuring individuals? Dead people, Social Security numbers, did those people benefit from the subsidies? Did their relatives benefit from the subsidies? Or did the brokers make a buck off the government? Which one is it? Anybody?
The insurance company and the brokers, they have every incentive.
So why didn't they go to jail?
There have actually been some people that have gone to jail.
So the punishment here is to punish every American that's subsidized today under the Affordable Care Act. They're the ones that are going to be punished because they're going to lose the ability to afford health care. That's what we're saying here today. I'm going to tell my colleagues here, let's see what happens January 1st next year when you start getting the phone calls from your constituents that are uninsured, lose insurance, or those hospitals that are relying on those premiums to stay open, not in the big cities, but out in the countryside. That's what this debate is really about. Fraud, let's get the DAs, attorney generals to go after these criminals. But to go after middle-class, hardworking families and take away the possibility of having health care and saying it's a broken system, if it's a broken system, I challenge my colleagues, show me something better. We're waiting for your solutions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Correa. I'd like to submit.
Alrighty, you've been listening in there to a House Judiciary Committee there on this Obamacare subsidy fraud. The Senate has also been convening, and you see there Senator Bill Cassidy, the Republican from Louisiana, there on the right side of your screen, speaking on his Make America Healthy Again initiative. That's what the first sign that he had said. I want to note here, of course, he is that, give me one, looks like we might be having difficulties. There we go, okay. Sorry guys, trying to find the right thing at the right time. It was not popping up when I needed it. Okay, let's take you out live to the Senate because, of course, the Senate is the one that is going to have this big vote coming in tomorrow on the Affordable Care Act subsidies extension, which is what is Obamacare here. So let's listen in to Senator Bill Cassidy, the Republican from Louisiana.
Principally benefits insurance companies. And the Republican plan is there to benefit the patient. Let's look at this. Democrats just want to extend the enhanced premium tax credits. Who gets the money? Insurance companies. Under our program, where the money goes to the patient and their families get it. What can it be used for? The enhanced premium tax credit that the Democrats wish to extend, no changes whatsoever, 3 years, subsidizes premiums. That goes to the insurance company. On our side, the money that the patient gets into that account, the money that we put into her pocket so she can pay the out-of-pocket for the insurance company, it goes for real care. The dentist, the physician, the glasses, the prescriptions. Who makes the decisions? Under the Democratic plan, the insurance companies make the decision. Under our plan, the patient makes the decision. We give power to the patient, not profit to the insurance company. Does it lower cost? Clearly not. What we've seen since Obamacare has passed is costs explode. We continue to have the healthcare inflation we're looking at now. But if we empower the patient, and if we give her the money, and we say the more careful you are spending this money, the more that money is going to stretch. I can promise you, she's going to be like every other responsible wife, mother, keeper of the family wallet. She's going to shop. Wait, my x-ray is $50 here. No, my x-ray is $500 there. I'm going where it's $50. She will make the wise financial decision for her family. And how does it work with low-cost bronze plans? Here, under the Democratic plan, we have just heard Senator Crapo point out how much fraud there has been with this system that we're currently under. Under the patient-driven account, the money goes into a health savings account, into your wallet, if you will, which is connected with your bronze, and the mechanisms by which we set that up make sure that we can cut out that fraud. And our bill goes after their fraud, their bill tolerates it. There is nothing in their legislation to stop the fraudulent stealing of billions of dollars of taxpayers' money. What it does do is continue payments to insurance companies who take 20% of that money for overhead and profit, whereas under our plan, did I say, the money we give to the patient, 100% goes to the care she knows she needs. That's the plan that Republicans are proposing. Put it differently, under the Republican plan, there is power to the patient. Under the Democratic plan, there is profit and power to the insurance company. Under the Republican plan, the patient uses the health care in her wallet, the health care money in her wallet to purchase the care she knows she needs. Under the Democratic plan, you go to the insurance company and please, maybe please, can I get permission to get the care I know I need? The Republican plan meets the American people where they are financially. Studies show that only that most families have less than $1,000 worth of savings. Under our plan, we recognize that. And we put money in their wallet, pocketbook, or purse so that they can pay for the care they need before they go into their deductible. I like this. This is a new poster for people who've heard my talk before. This is the Democratic plan. You get a $6,000 deductible, and that's what you feel like that woman right there when she is stressed because she doesn't have the money to pay for the care her family needs. Here, in our health savings account, the money is, if you will, in her purse. And when the doctor says you need this prescription for your son's earache, she has the money to pay for it right off the bat. Democratic plan, it brings financial stress. Profits to the insurance company, stress to the patient. The Republican plan, money in the pocket to pay for the out-of-pocket for the insurance plan. Now, by the way, this plan in which we put money in the pocket of the patient to pay for the out-of-pocket of our insurance policy, the Democratic leader has called it a junk plan. No, pause for a second, Mr. President. Democrats put that plan into place. Democrats actually put these plans on the Obamacare exchange. He is calling a junk plan that which they have been preserving for the last 10 years, swearing up and down that it meets the needs of the American people. All Republicans have done is added to it something called a health savings account. If you will, money in the patient's purse, pocketbook, or wallet to pay for the out-of-pocket associated with this plan. To call this a junk plan either shows that the Democratic leader does not know what we're talking about, or that hypocritically he has been defending an Obamacare law which created this very plan. By the way, I was smiling last night when I saw that the New York Times mimicked this talking point like a Democratic Party organ. What's junk? That for a family of four, two parents, 50 in their 50s, children 18 and 19, that they would get $5,000 a year. Think about that, Mr. President. $5,000 a year for that family I just described to pay for their initial health care expenses. Think about if one of those 19-year-old children had diabetes, chronic care. Under our plan, they've got $5,000 to help pay for that chronic care right off the bat. Under the Democratic plan, with a $6,000 deductible, you're paying for that out of pocket. And that's what your face looks like, because you cannot afford it. Our plan relieves the stress. Now, next, the minority leader says that he wants to reject all these benefits. He wants to continue to send 100% of the money to the insurance company, which takes 20% for profit and overhead, as opposed to send the money to the patient for her purse, wallet, or pocketbook, so that she has money in her pocketbook to pay the out-of-pocket from the insurance company. He's defending that with a $6,000 deductible because he says that Republicans want to prevent taxpayer-funded abortions. He wants to have taxpayer-funded abortions, apparently, and Republicans, consistent with the American will, as we have for decades, think that we should not do that. And somehow he's making out like this is a new development. Well, just for the sake of the American people, the so-called Hyde Amendment, which prevents federal dollars from being spent on abortion, has been agreed to by Democrats on annual appropriation bills since the 1970s. They have been agreeing to this for 50 years, and all of a sudden that is being used as a rationale to send 100% of the money to the insurance companies, who take 20% of it for profit and overhead, as opposed to sending thousands of dollars to the patient for her to pay first dollar coverage, to have it in her pocketbook to pay the out-of-pocket for her insurance plan. Mr. President, I don't want this to seem partisan. I've been saying Republican and Democrat, but let me say, we should not have a Republican plan. We should not have a Democratic plan. We should have an American plan. This is the cartoon representing an American. But think of the person you know. Think of the person you graduated from high school with. Good people. Good people. Several kids trying to make ends meet. They don't have a lot of money, but good people. That's what we're talking about. Let's just separate this from R versus D. What about the people we are supposed to care about who cannot afford a $6,000 deductible, but would love to have thousands of dollars in their purse, pocketbook, or wallet to pay for the out-of-pocket cost associated with that insurance plan? Isn't that where we want to be? Now, just to put a face on this, maybe some numbers I should say, this is real. This is off healthcare.gov from 2026, this coming year. A family of four, couple in their 50s, 2 children, 20 and 21, 500% of federal poverty level, about $160,000, I think, per year. Okay? Under our plan, they would be able to get a bronze plan as opposed to a silver, which saves them roughly $6,000 per year. The amount in their health savings account, if you will, in their pocketbook, purse, or wallet, in their pocketbook to pay the out-of-pocket cost of the insurance plan, would be $5,000. Under what Democrats are insisting they must buy, will not give them an option. They have $0 to pay towards that $6,000 deductible. And the net deductible, because they say, oh my gosh, if you get a plan with a lower premium, your deductible is higher. Because of the money that would be going into the health savings account, the net deductible is cheaper with the cheaper policy under the Republican plan. Under the Democratic plan, the net deductible is higher. Let me add one more thing. Senator Crapo spoke about the incredible amount of fraud associated with the current implementation of Obamacare. And the Democratic leader wants a straight-up, clean reauthorization for 3 years. He does not want to fight that fraud. Whatever bills have put up in the past, that's not what he's talking about now. He's talking about right now Not only 100% of the money going to the insurance company with $6,000 deductibles, he's talking about continuing the system that is rife with fraud. If you're at home working, or no, if you're at work and you're working so hard and you're paying taxes to support our country and you hear there's fraud, it should drive you crazy. It drives me crazy. Why won't our Democratic colleagues join us in doing things to stop that fraud? I've never seen a party so committed to generating profits for insurance companies as what I'm seeing right now. Mr. President, let's cut that fraud. Let's put the money in the purse, pocketbook, or wallet of the American citizen to give her money to pay for the out-of-pocket cost of an insurance company. Don't stick them with a $6,000 deductible. Let's give power to the patient, not profit to the insurance company. And with that, Mr. President, I yield.
Mr. President.
Senator from California.
Mr. President, we're here today just about a month after the longest shutdown in American history. You all remember the 43 days that we went without a fully functioning federal government. Let's remember why that happened. Plain and simple, it was because our Republican colleagues refused to take steps to save health care for millions of Americans. In large part, I don't know if it was an individual choice or simply because there was no direction from the White House to come in and do so. All I know is that our Republican colleagues in Congress refused to come to the table, refused to negotiate with Democrats, refused to acknowledge that we were literally weeks away from a crisis that will kick millions of people, millions of Americans off their health insurance unless Congress acts. That's the point Democrats are trying to make, and that's the issue we were trying to address during the shutdown, because the appropriations process is the opportunity to address a crisis that's right around the corner. Now, eventually, yes, a handful of my Democratic colleagues took the Republican majority at their word that after voting to reopen government, addressing this spike in healthcare costs was the next order of business. At the time, I expressed my skepticism to go along with a promise to fix something later from a party that earlier this year enacted the biggest cuts in history to Medicaid. I find it hard to take the word of the Republican majority that they're committed to addressing health care costs and to expand coverage to more Americans when they just kicked 15 million Americans off their insurance. And so, yes, just about a month after this longest shutdown in American history, we now find ourselves 3 weeks away from the expiration of the Affordable Care Act tax credits that so many of us are talking about. Now, have hope, because Democrats are here with a plan. We'll ask this body to vote on a straightforward 3-year extension of these life-saving subsidies that we all support. The question will be, are there enough Republicans that will join us in doing so? Keep people on their health care. And we can do the policy work and negotiation to address some of the genuine concerns that we've heard about over these last couple of months. But don't let health coverage lapse for millions of Americans. This isn't a game. We're 3 weeks away from the catastrophic spike of cost in health insurance for so many. Over 20 million Americans are on the verge of seeing their monthly premiums not just increase, but skyrocket. 4 million Americans could be forced to give up their insurance altogether, including 400,000 in California, my home state. The increase in premiums mean hundreds, if not thousands of dollars more monthly, not annually, but monthly for working families. Working families who are already having a tough time making ends meet as costs are rising all around them. Cost of groceries, cost of energy bills, cost of housing, and now cost of healthcare too? To the point that Americans in having to make these tough choices. Do I pay the rent? Do I pay the water bill? Do I pay the light bill? Can I even afford health insurance next year for my family? That's a truly heartbreaking decision that's happening all across the country. I know you're hearing from your constituents, and I'm hearing from mine. I hear from people like Lisa, a single mom from Meadow Valley, California, who was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease in 1996. Thank God today, Lisa is cancer-free, in no small part thanks to regular checkups and the affordable health care plan that she can participate in because of these tax credits. But in 2026, Lisa isn't just looking after herself and her own health, she's looking after her son. She's a single parent. She's looking after her parents as they're aging. They're now in their 80s. And she's wondering whether this lapse in tax credits might put her necessary treatment out of reach. So I'm here not just speaking up, I'm here fighting for her. I hear from people like Lana, a small business owner in Oakland, California, who has 2 kids in college, and college isn't cheap. And as she says, quote, "It's tough to be in the middle class right now." Lana's so determined to give her kids a good education. But with less financial aid available, right? Don't get me started on what else has been cut by this Republican majority in Congress. For her, it fundamentally means redirecting money that would otherwise go to her retirement plan. So imagine that, having to choose between investing in your future retirement or your kids' education or your access to health care. While the subsidies for the ACA premium still exist, she's able to make it work. Without those subsidies, she doesn't know what's going to have to go. Do you give up your health care? Do you have to start dipping into your retirement, putting your future financial security at risk? Or do you give up your kids' dreams of a higher education? Again, that painful choice is the reality for so many families right now. And so I'm fighting for them too. Look, I can go on and on with story after story, example after example. It doesn't have to be this way. That's why Democrats have put forward this serious, tangible plan to avoid this fiscal crisis, this healthcare cost crisis for families across the country. And no, the fact of the matter is our Republican colleagues don't have a serious plan. Look no further to the fact that it's the 11th hour now, and they've put forward a proposal that wouldn't lower premiums for a single American. In fact, it would make the problem worse. It would allow the tax credits to expire. It will increase premiums and deductibles for tens of millions of Americans. It'll push many people into what may be referred to as a bronze plan, or in reality, a catastrophic plan, the least comprehensive coverage on the market with sky-high deductibles. In some of these plans, you get a $1,000 coupon. That doesn't do a hell of a lot when these junk plans are forcing families to pay thousands of dollars out of pocket before the insurance even kicks in. And it certainly won't protect people from financial ruin when they get truly, truly sick. But sadly, it's not surprising. It's not shocking. This is an 11th hour proposal idea coming from a party that for 15 years has been talking about repeal and replace, not just attacking the ACA. They vowed to repeal and replace, repeal and replace. No shortage of efforts to repeal the ACA, but in 15 years, they haven't come forward with a plan to replace it. Certainly not a better plan to replace the ACA. So let's get real. We know that this will cause hardship. And the hardship and the pain that is so tragic is made worse because we know it's preventable. So let's vote tomorrow and pass this clean 3-year extension of the ACA tax credits and work to improve upon the policy and the plans that are in place. It's not controversial, folks. The overwhelming majority of American people support extending the ACA tax credits. And not just supportive of what we're doing, Americans are demanding that we do something about the cost of health care and the cost of living overall. You've seen Trump's approval ratings on the economy, haven't you? I know you're well aware of the election results from last month when an overwhelming majority of Americans cast their ballots rejecting Trump and Republican policies that are putting billionaires over the needs of working families. They're fed up. They're demanding that their government do something to help them get by, to help them survive in many cases. To address the affordability crunch, a true crisis that Donald Trump dismisses as a con job and as a hoax. So here we are on the eve of a truly consequential vote to prevent costs from rising for the American people, to prevent health care becoming out of reach for too many families. Here's our chance as a body to truly do something about that. So I urge everybody to vote yes. And let's help millions of Americans keep their health care come the new year. Because we know that a no vote will only rip that care away from millions of families. The choice, the contrast, couldn't be any more clear. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President. Texas. Mr. President, I rise today to recognize a true servant of Texas, Carl Micha. For over 10 years, Carl has worked in my office, starting as my regional director and now ending his career as my deputy chief of staff and state director. For over 3 decades.
Okay, Senator Alex Padilla, before what you're watching now, Senator Ted Cruz, before speaking about those American Affordable Care Act subsidies. We were watching that for the last little bit, it appears. Senator Ted Cruz, they're Republican from Texas, now going to be speaking about a member of his staff. So we will monitor what goes on with that. The House of Representatives is continuing to vote on a number of different pieces of legislation, just kind of regular business here. We'll watch the Senate and see where things go there. We'll take you back online for just a moment. In the meantime, a quick break here. Brooklyn News Live returns in a moment. Welcome back into Brookland News Live here as we approach about 4:30 p.m. here Central Time, 5:30 on the East, Mountain Time, 3:30, 2:30 on the West Coast. It is good to be with you. We are going to turn to some video here now. This was from earlier today. Taking a look at that video in Senate Democrats holding a press conference earlier today. After Senate Democrats, we'll listen in to Senate Republicans. Let's listen in here, though.
All right. Good morning, everybody. And first, I want to thank Senator Klobuchar. She put this great event together, and she's been one of the greatest leaders, not only in the Senate, but in the country, on health care, on the extending the ACA tax credits, and in reducing costs for the American people. Now, tomorrow is a moment of truth for the Republicans here in the Senate. Are they going to bring health care costs down? Or will they sit by and let premiums explode for millions of Americans? This vote is going to be one of the most important votes that they take in the whole term of the Senate, in the whole 2 years of the Senate. We have only 3 weeks away from massive and devastating cliff for millions of Americans. As you will hear from some of our guests here, this is not just sort of an on-paper accounting political thing. This is life and death for people. This is having a decent life or a life where you can hardly cope if you don't get the health care that you need. Congress should have solved this problem months ago. Hakeem Jeffries and I asked the Republican leadership and Donald Trump over and over and over again to sit down and come up with a solution to the crisis. They refused. We were ready. We said, let's negotiate. Let's find a path. Republicans refused to lift a finger. They knew the crisis was coming. But ever since the fight with Hillary Clinton on health care in 1993, the party has been just intransigent in not helping people, but just helping the special interests, whether it be the drug companies or the insurance companies or hedge funds or whatever else. They just sat there, did nothing. And now the day of reckoning is coming. And it's the day of reckoning for millions of Americans who are going to lose their health care, who are going to have to pay $500 or $1,000. A working family making, say, $60,000, they think they're in decent shape in most parts of the country. But how are they going to afford an additional $10,000 a year? What are they going to cut back on? Their health care, or their food, or their ability to buy some Christmas presents for their kids? So, with just days left on the clock, the clearest, cleanest, easiest, and best path left is to bill what Democrats are proposing. A clean extension of current tax credits. That's it. No poison pills, no gimmicks, just relief. Our bill is the only proposal on either side that has party-wide support on both sides of the Capitol. Democrats are fighting for lower health care costs for the American people. Republicans are fighting with each other. They can't even come up with a plan. So they put in this junk insurance thing, which I'm sure some of my colleagues will talk about, which does absolutely nothing. They're just so embarrassed they have no plan that they put in a really bad plan. That is not going to get any support and is loaded with poison pills. What they want to do is send people a one-time check, maybe, if you're lucky, $80 a month. How on earth is $80 a month going to help the people here if their premiums are doubling and tripling? Because they don't do a thing. They don't change. They don't extend the tax credits by even a day, a minute, an hour. They just don't do it. They're so in the grips of the special interests and of their ideology, which says you're on your own, baby, that they are stuck. Our bill is the only bill that will prevent this crisis from happening. It's the last train out of the station. We urge our Republican colleagues, for the sake of the American people, to get on that train. So, we need 13 Republicans, 13. We ask Americans all over the country to call their Republican senators and say, this is your last chance. The vote is tomorrow. Last chance to help us avoid a crisis that will be devastating for so many of us. Bottom line is very simple. We should tell our Republican colleagues, every American should say, vote to protect your constituents. Don't let this crisis hit on your watch, because it is now your responsibility. And there are so many cases across the country. Every one of us, when we go back to our states, hears about these cases. And you will hear some of them now. And they really, I just talked to Becky Roberts, and it breaks your heart to hear what she has to say and what will happen to her if these credits are not extended. Becky.
Hi, I'm Becky Roberts. I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Hi, sorry. I'm Becky Roberts. I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia. I was born with a dislocated hip. They didn't catch it until I was 16. The deformities continued over time. I've always worked for small companies. I could have been on disability my entire life, but I chose to work, and I'm glad I did. But the companies I've worked for, places I've worked for, have been smaller and have never been able to offer insurance. In 2005, when my son was 5 years old, he's Asperger autistic. My husband was a cancer survivor, and I had the disability. At that point, if we could get insurance on the regular market, it would have been $5,000 a month. Needless to say, we didn't have a spare $5,000 a month. Years later, I got on the Affordable Care Act. I've been on the Affordable Care Act for a few years now. My husband has passed, but my son was able to get the treatment that he needed. Medical tele this summer, I had surgery to correct my hip deformity. I'm currently undergoing physical therapy. My premium has gone up 110%, which I can probably manage, but some people can't. If I'm allowed to keep my insurance, if I'm allowed to continue with physical therapy, within a few months to a year, I'll be out of the wheelchair. Otherwise, this is where I'm going to be for the rest of my life. I want to do basic things like walk my dog, simple things like that. And if I'm allowed to, I can have those dreams, those simple dreams. My story is the story of millions of people that are being impacted by this, some that could lose cancer treatments and things even more serious than mine. But it's a matter of life, and it's a matter of quality of life today. And thank you to the senators.
Thank you so much, Becky, for being willing to join us and share your story. And it just proves right there. Have health insurance you need. She's going to be able to get out of that wheelchair. Otherwise, that's where she stays. So what this is about is just a clear line in the sand. Democrats are fighting for health care. We're fighting to reduce premiums, and specifically on the Affordable Care Act, where we well know that 75% of the people who are on these plans are in red states that Donald Trump won. And now, while he is on his so-called affordability tour, in which he has chosen to call affordability a hoax last night, there are people like Becky and others you're going to hear from today who are struggling. Americans across the country are being forced to make choices right now. They're seeing that their premiums have doubled and tripled. They are weighing what this means for their families. Should they have no plan? Should they get a junk plan? Should they stay in a job when they actually want to go start a business? Should they have to close down their business? Maybe they have one employee, like one woman I met in Minnesota whose employee just got through cancer, is doing well. Do they have to drop that employee because of the doubling of the premiums? They have to start paying the new rate starting next week, Monday, December 15th. That's why we're doing this vote right now. Republicans can't kick this problem down the road to January. It's not a January problem. It's not a February problem. It's a now problem. So we have once again offered a straightforward solution. Obviously, there's many more things we would do to reform our healthcare system and make it more affordable. But right now, to stem this disaster and crisis that Donald Trump has created by refusing to do anything about extending the tax credits for the Affordable Care Act. We are saying right now we can do this. So what's going to happen if we don't? Well, you're going to now hear from Aaron, an Iowa farmer from Polk County, Iowa, place I visited a few times, a fifth-generation family farmer. 23% of farmers are on these plans. An extraordinary number of rural people are on these plans. And what you've seen in the last month, from elections from Virginia, New Jersey, to Georgia and Colorado, to Miami last night, where the first Democrat was elected mayor in 30 years, in the Georgia legislative race, which was off everyone's radars because no one thought it was winnable, the people of this country get it. It doesn't matter how many tours you go on that have the word affordability. When you call it a hoax and you actually don't do anything about it, the American people can read their bills. They can see their premium increases. So with that, I just tell our Republican friends, you can do it with us on this vote, and you can fix at least this current problem. You can do it with us by putting this on legislation, or we are going to march into the midterms against your resistance and win and get this done. And with that, I am so honored to turn this over to Aaron Lehman, who, as I noted, fifth-generation farmer, talk about the ACA and what it means to his family. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Aaron Lehman, and I farm in northern Polk County, where I grow corn, soybeans, oats, and hay. My family and I are farmers because we love to grow things that feed our neighbors, our communities, and the rest of the world. But that is getting harder because for my wife and I, our health care costs are about to double. The Affordable Care Act has been one of the best investments in rural health care in decades. For farming families, entrepreneurs, and employees at small businesses who don't offer health insurance, the ACA has expanded coverage, lowered costs, encouraged rural Iowans to take more risk in developing and expanding our farm operations. And in the Farmers Union, our members are telling us how important the ACA has been for their families and farming operations. For myself, my family having access to the marketplace insurance policies has been a must because the affordability provided by the enhanced premium tax credits make our budget doable. My wife is a breast cancer survivor. Without the Affordable Care Act, she likely wouldn't have even been offered an insurance product because of her pre-existing condition. Because of the Affordable Care Act, when she was laid off later because of downsizing, she was able to access affordable insurance and go back to school and get a higher degree. Now she's an independent contractor, providing care for elderly and other citizens in need, and she still has the access to that coverage even though she's an independent contractor. And it allows her to help out on the farm during our busy season because we know that we have coverage. And on our farm, the ACA has done other things to help us. It's made it more affordable for us to figure out how to replace and fix aging equipment, to bring new innovations onto the farm, to markets for what we
Okay, so again, Senate Democrats, they're holding a press conference in order to give enough time for the Senate Republicans press conference. What we have to do here is stop this press conference early and change feeds here. So again, Senate Republicans also holding a press conference here. Give me just a second because I do have to get that video pulled up and ready for you guys. Might be ready here. This is from yesterday on Capitol Hill, and I'll put that in here. Yesterday. Gotcha. This is yesterday on Capitol Hill. Take a look.
Well, good afternoon. As you all know, we're going to have a vote this week on Thursday on a Democrat proposal to deal with the Biden COVID bonuses. And this is a vote, as you all know, we could have had weeks ago. It's been on offer now before we had to go through a 43-day government shutdown. But that's what the Democrats opted to do. And so at the end of the 43 days now, we're going to have a vote on their proposal, which, as it turns out, is a really a proposal that just extends the status quo, doesn't do anything to reform these Biden COVID bonuses in a way that would get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think the one thing that's clear about this, and I think you all who follow this subject know this, that the way that the program is structured, the money goes straight to the insurance companies, and the way that we think this ought to work is you ought to come up with a way in which you can deliver the benefit to the patients and not to the insurance companies, and that you shouldn't have hardworking Americans subsidizing affluent people, people who make a lot of money. And that's what their proposal continues to do. There is no income limit. There are $0 premiums. There are millions of Americans who don't even know they have coverage, and they have decided not to do anything. Zero reforms to this program. And so the bill that they're going to put on the floor will fail. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a path forward here. We also will have a vote. Our members have decided that we're going to vote on a Crapo-Cassidy proposal, which does the things that I mentioned. It actually does make health insurance premiums more affordable. It drives down, according to the Congressional Budget Office, premiums by double-digit levels. It delivers the benefit directly to the patient, not to the insurance company, and it does it in a way that actually saves money. So to the taxpayer. That is a win-win proposal. So that is an alternative that we will put forward and that we will have a vote on Thursday. And we'll see where the Democrats come down on that. But the fact of the matter is that as long as we have been talking about this subject, and again, they drug us through a 43-day government shutdown in order to do this. Just in the last week, the Government Accountability Office came out with a finding in an audit that they did. There were 19 fraudulent claims made to this program, or 20 I should say, 19 got through. In other words, 95% error rate. When I say waste, fraud, and abuse, I am not kidding. That is the finding as recently as this last week by the Government Accountability Office. This program desperately needs to be reformed. The Democrats have decided we're not going to do anything to reform it, and so we'll see where the votes are on Thursday. But we will have an alternative that we will put up that reflects the views of the Republicans here in the United States Senate about how to make health insurance more affordable in this country, how to ensure that it's not the insurance companies that are getting enriched, that it's actually benefiting the patient, and how to make sure that this is a good deal for the American taxpayer. John Brasso.
So this week we are going to vote on a Democrat proposal to send $83 billion directly from the federal treasury to the bank accounts of insurance companies. And that is going to cause the cost of health care in this country to continue to go up. I'm a doctor, practiced medicine in Wyoming for 24 years. People need the care that they need from a doctor that they choose at a price they can afford. And that all went away with Obamacare. I remember President Obama saying, oh, if you pass this, your premiums will go down by $2,500 a family a year. Instead, premiums doubled. So what happened? Well, the Democrats wanted to hide these premium increases, so they said, we better send a lot of money directly to the insurance companies. Don't let the people see it. Send it right to the insurance companies. The insurance companies loved it. Premiums went up 221%, and the stock of the insurance companies went up 500% to 1,000%. That's what happened with Obamacare. And now at this point, over 90% of premiums are subsidized by the federal government. Obamacare was always pricey. It was never affordable. And then during COVID, people saw this and said, well, Democrats said, this is bad. Its prices keep going up. What do we do? They said, we need to put new subsidies on top of the old subsidies, and that is the Biden COVID bonus subsidies. Those are the ones that are expiring at the end of this week. What happened? Well, the Democrats chose that date for expiration, but they also removed any income limits. You can make $1 million a year, and you're still getting all the subsidies from the federal government paid in your name directly from the government to the insurance companies. And now they want to send another $83 billion. That's going to be the vote this Thursday. They're not going to pay any attention to the reforms that are needed because of the waste, the fraud, the abuse, and the corruption. And in just today's Washington Post, the editorial in today's Washington Post, Obamacare subsidies make it too easy to scam the system. That's what's happening. This system is full of waste, fraud, and abuse because they make it too easy to scam the system. Well, I oppose sending these payments directly from the federal government to the insurance companies. They shouldn't be rewarded for what they have done. Money should go directly to patients so they can make their own decisions. And that'll drive down costs, make insurance companies compete to the people that are actually paying the bills, the taxpayers. Make them offer things that those patients want to have insurance, not held hostage in the straitjacket of the one-size-fits-all that is Obamacare that is hurting our country today.
Leader Thune, good afternoon. Can you speak to, for a moment to the political concerns of vulnerable Republicans if Obamacare, health care, these subsidies aren't addressed in some form going into 2026? You know, the president's talking about affordability. The president's talking about affordability. What happens to your side if you don't address that?
Well, and so are we, and which is why the proposal we will put out there will actually drive premiums down. And that is in stark contrast to, as Senator Barrasso just pointed out, a program that since its inception has increased costs, premiums in the individual marketplace 221%. That is triple the CPI and double what the rates have increased in the group market, the employer market, where a lot of people, about 150 million Americans, get their insurance. This is a failed program, and it does nothing but drive premiums up. And the increase in premiums, who's that going to? That's going to the insurance companies. So the proposal we'll put out there will bring insurance premiums down. It will be fiscally responsible, and it'll get us away from the practice of giving the money all to the insurance companies and put it back in the hands of the patients. So there will be something out there that Republicans will be able to talk about and support and vote for, and then we'll see. I mean, what happens on Thursday? Maybe there's some wise Democrats who will decide to vote for a proposal like that. But if there aren't, if neither proposal gets 60, then we'll see where it goes from there. But I do know that we want this issue, affordability, to be front and center. And the way to do that is not to extend for 3 years at a cost of $83 billion to the taxpayers a program that continues to drive insurance costs, premiums higher and higher for the American people.
On these Venezuelan boat strikes, a number of your members this morning said they would support releasing the video of that September 2nd strike publicly. Would you personally support that?
Well, I'm happy with what they are doing. I think they are, the relevant committees, as I've said before, the Armed Services Committee, both Democrats and Republicans have had an opportunity to view that video. How they decide to proceed with it, I'll leave to their, to their discretion. But I think anybody who probably wants to, any member who wants to see that, I suspect probably would have that opportunity if they choose to.
Given the uncertainty of the tariffs with the Supreme Court decision potentially overturning them, does it make sense for the president to turn to those tariffs, that tariff revenue, to pay for farm aid, and tariff revenue goes into the federal treasury? Isn't it the Congress's power to spend that tariff revenue as it sees fit?
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who've been following farm policy for a long time, which I have, I've been through 4 farm bills. The one we're working on right now that got derailed, but we got a lot of it included in the reconciliation bill last summer, would have been my 5th. And throughout the years, there have been attempts, and obviously this is the most recent one, to deal with tremendous losses that are being experienced in the agricultural marketplace, in this case because of a loss of markets. And that is related to some of the trade issues that we're dealing with. The president's obviously trying to get the attention of the Chinese, get us into a better place in terms of reciprocity with them. But in the meantime, it has an impact on the markets that a lot of our agricultural producers have access to. So to me, it makes all the sense in the world that if you've got a lot of revenue coming in from tariffs, and you need sort of a bridge for farmers. A lot of the changes that we made in last summer in the reconciliation bill don't take effect until next year, and the farmers, the safety net programs, will benefit from those. In the meantime, to have something that helps them bridge that time when they've had this loss of markets and are experiencing historically low commodity prices and historically high input prices. The margins in agriculture are gone. And I say that for corn and soybeans, other commodities, but those two in particular are where we've seen a real impact. And I think the administration's trying to respond to that and ensure that the farmers get to a time where we have that market is opening up again, China's opening up again, so hopefully this will be a bridge to the future. But I think what the administration did in terms of using tariff revenue to do that makes sense.
Just on the Venezuelan boat strike again, I know you say that all your members have access to that video, but they're coming out with a dramatically different interpretation of that video. Isn't that one of the reasons for the administration to be transparent and release the video for all Americans to see?
Well, I think, again, I think that the relevant committees here on Capitol Hill, that has been made available to them. And I'm going to leave it up to them to decide who has access to it. But as I said before, I think any member of Congress, and certainly people are going to come up with different interpretations because we live in a political environment. And but I suspect that anybody who has seen it knows pretty clearly what the facts are. And I'll leave it at that. I think that the relevant committees will make decisions about who has access to it.
Back on healthcare, does Kathy Crapo have the support of your conference? And some of your members have also put forward temporary 2-year extensions of the ACA with changes in pipelines and other reforms. Might those come to a vote as well?
Well, we have other members, as you point out, who have their own proposals, and they, you have to ask them how they want to have those dealt with. But I suspect you may see others advanced, other ideas advanced, and whether or not those get voted on, I think is going to be probably up to some of our colleagues who are offering those proposals. What I can tell you is, as a conference, our members, and I can't say 100%, but I think for the most part, I would argue are united behind the Crapo-Cassidy proposal, which, as I said, in terms of its emphasis, is about patients, not insurance companies, and about lowering premiums, not increasing them, and about getting a better return for the federal taxpayer. Thank you all.
Senate Republicans there in a short press conference, I'd say. A live look there at the White House. Lots of news coming out of it today. We were following some of it with the Venezuelan oil tanker strike that occurred earlier today. We'll put up the headlines that we are continuing to follow there on your screen just so you can stick with it. In the meantime, that does it for us. Remember, you can always catch us on all of the social media pages that have scrolled through the entire time on the bottom of your screen, and the one thing on your screen right now at the bottom of it, brooklandnews.com. That's where you can find all the news you need and so much more. That does it for us. You're watching Brooklyn News Live. We won't see you for the rest of the week. We'll see you back here on Monday, though.